All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How is everybody doing tonight? Real quick, just want to give a shout out to the replay gang. Thank you guys for watching, but you missed the party. You missed the party. So make sure Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, you are here. Don't miss it. That's the best part. But you're still going to enjoy this. I can promise you that. Also, really quick before we begin, just want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the stream, MySickShirt.com. Look at all these fine ladies. You can look exactly like that. You will turn into this woman if you buy any of these shirts. JK. But whatever your persuasion, they've got something for you. And of course, the only place to get your very own official The Indian Jesus merch only at my6shirt.com. All right. I am so excited for this one. I am excited. Some of you may not be, I'm sure everybody knows who Bill Nye, the science guy, is. But if you're not familiar with Ken Ham, he is a young Earth creationist, which means that he believes that the Earth is 6,000 years old, and God just, I guess, snapped it into existence or whatever, and does not believe in anything. It doesn't believe in science. And so there was a number of different ways that I wanted to attack this conversation. And there was a couple different debates, conversations, so on and so forth that I was looking at. And I really wanted to make sure we start way at the bottom and build up from there. I know that many of you are not going to be young Earth creationists, but we have to start somewhere. So this was from a couple years ago, maybe 2014. Yeah, 2014. So it's it's not brand new, but the information is great just the same. So let's just dive in. All we've missed so far is them introducing Bill Nye the Science Guy, and then they're about to introduce Ken Ham, as I'm seeing from you guys here, that you are not too familiar with Ken Ham. He is, like I said, a young Earth creationist, and he is the founder of the ARK Encounter, where basically he wanted to recreate the whole experience of Noah's Ark, and it failed miserably. But there's a lot here, so let's dive right in. Make sure we're sped up a little bit. And who we got in the building? Lil Toes. Hey, Ethan Klein did, in fact, got. That might be something that we talk about. Maybe not. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of been done. We got Indie Film in the building. Welcome, buddy. What is up, you magnificent bastard? Oh, I am excited for this one. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Glad you guys are here. Cannot wait for the rest of you to show up. As always, you guys know the sound can sometimes suck. If you cannot hear the video, please do let me know. You're getting oh, okay. Thank you guys. You're getting ahead of me, Indie Film, because I am not a fan of Bill Nye anymore. But as of 2017, he had not gotten into all the wokeness. And the last thing, the last straw for me was when he had that Netflix show, and he just went straight into the gender bender. Boo! Oh wait, I don't want to curse yet. Bill Nye is not really a scientist. He's got a degree in I think it's mechanical engineering, and he's definitely a smart guy. He's definitely smarter than me. He's definitely smarter than you. But let's pretend it's still 2017, and he has not gone to the woke side. And let's again attack ideas, not people.
Of Education at the University of Queensland in Brisbane,
Sound
Australia.
good?
And now, Mr. Ham, you opted to go first, so you will be first with your 5-minute opening statement.
Well, good evening. I know that not everyone watched.
Just before, if somebody could give me a confirmation before we start. Yes, good sound. No, maybe. So that's called book smart. He's I mean, in terms of Bill Nye, he's a very smart guy. He's not a scientist in the way that a lot of other people actually in this space. As this, thank you, sir. As the new atheism that was around like in the early 2000s with the Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, all those type of people. Bill Nye is definitely like low tier when it comes to that stuff. But as we're about to see, that's not really going to matter.
Watching this debate will necessarily agree with what I have to say, but I'm an Aussie and live over here in America, and they tell me I have an accent, and so it doesn't matter what I say. Some people tell me we just like to hear saying it. So I hope you enjoy me saying it anyway. Well, the debate topic is this: is creation a viable model of origins in today's modern scientific era?
And again, I wanted to start here with creation and evolution and all that stuff, because if we're going to, as a community, if we're going to talk about religion, then we need to start at the bare bones stuff. And so again, I acknowledge that many of you probably do not subscribe to the young Earth idea that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. I get that, but we got to start somewhere. So here we go.
This was first announced on the internet. There are lots of statements like this one from the Richard Dawkins Foundation: scientists should not debate creationists, period. And this one from one of the discovery.com websites: should scientists debate creationists? Right here, I believe there's a gross misrepresentation in our culture. We're seeing people in being indoctrinated to believe that creationists can't be scientists. I believe it's all a part of secularists hijacking the word science. I want you to meet a modern day scientist who is a biblical creationist.
My name is Stuart Burgess. I'm a professor of engineering design at Bristol University in the UK.
That's
My
their
name is
echo.
Stuart Burgess.
That's
I'm
their
a
echo,
professor
not
of
me.
engineering design at Bristol University in the UK. I have published over 130 scientific papers on the science of design in engineering and biological systems. From my research work, I have found that the scientific evidence fully supports creationism as the best
Does it though?
explanation to origins. I've also designed major parts of spacecraft launched by ESA and NASA.
So here's a biblical creationist who's a scientist who's also an inventor. And I want young people to understand that. The problem, I believe, is this: we need to define terms correctly. We need to define creation, evolution in regard to origins, and we need to define science. And in this opening statement, I want to concentrate on dealing with the word science. I believe the word science has been hijacked by secularists.
So that's a claim. That's a claim. We're starting out. I'm gonna grab my my notepad here, and science hijacked by secular. And so as he as he makes these claims, I want to be keeping track of them and see that he is arguing in good faith, that he's putting forth his claims, and then he's trying to support them, as opposed to win the argument. So let's see. That's his first claim.
Now, what is science? Well, the origin of the word comes from the classical Latin scientia, which means to know. And if you look up a dictionary, it'll say science means state of knowing, knowledge. But there's different types of knowledge, and I believe this is where the confusion lies. There's experimental or observational science, as we call it. That's using the scientific method: observation, measurement, experiment, testing. That's what produces our technology: computers, spacecraft, jet planes, smoke detectors, looking at DNA, antibiotics.
Hey, we got Division Plus in the building. Bah, 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 bah. Glad you are here for this one. You are going to enjoy this, my friend. You are going to enjoy this. It says that scientist that believes in creationism represents like 1% of all scientists in that field. And apparently Lil Toes is a scientist. So maybe he's part of the 1%. We are the 99%.
Medicines and vaccines. You see, all scientists, whether creationists or evolutionists, actually have the same observational or experimental science. And it doesn't matter whether you're a creationist or an evolutionist, you can be a great scientist. For instance, here's an atheist who is a great scientist, Craig Venter, one of the first researchers.
I don't want to keep moving the captions around, so I'm going to try, but if it covers some shit, then you'll figure it out.
Just to sequence the human genome. Or Dr. Raymond Damadian. He is a man who invented the MRI scanner and revolutionized medicine. He's a biblical creationist. But I want us to also understand molecules to man evolution belief has nothing to do with developing technology. You see, when we're talking about origins, we're talking about the past. We're talking about our origins. We weren't there. You can't observe that, whether it's molecules to man evolution or whether it's a creation account.
So that's another thing that he's saying. You weren't there. You didn't observe it.
When you're talking about the past, we like to call that origins or historical science, knowledge concerning the past. Here at the Creation Museum, we make no apology about the fact that our origins or historical science actually is based upon the biblical account of origins. Now, when you research science textbooks being used in public schools, what we found is this. By and large, the origins or historical science is based upon man's ideas about the past, for instance, the ideas of Darwin. And our research has found that public school textbooks are using the same word science for observational science and historical science. They arbitrarily.
Hey, we got a Morty stream. Beep, 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 beep. Hey, what's up? I'm a dog. Like the video. Yay!
Rarely define science as naturalism and outlaw the supernatural. They present molecules to man evolution as fact. They are imposing, I believe, the religion of naturalism or atheism on generations of students. You see, I
Evolution is fact.
assert that the word science has been hijacked by secularists in teaching evolution to force the religion of naturalism on generations of kids. Secular evolutionists teach that all life developed by natural processes from some primordial form, that man is just an evolved animal, which has great bearing on how we view life and death. For instance, as Bill states,
it's very hard to accept for many of us that when you die, it's over.
But you see, the Bible gives a totally different account of origins, of who we are, where we came from, the meaning of life, and our future. That through one man, sin entered the world, and death through sin, but that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, whoever believes in him should not perish and have everlasting life. So, is creation a Bible model of origins in today's modern scientific era? I say the creation-evolution debate is a conflict between two philosophical worldviews based on two different accounts of origins or science beliefs, and creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era.
That is time. I had the unenviable job of being the timekeeper here. I'm like the referee in football that you don't like, but I will periodically, if either one of our debaters runs over on anything, I will stop them in the name of keeping it fair for all. Mr. Ham, thank you for your comments. Now it's Mr. Nye's turn for a 5-minute opening statement. Mr. Nye.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I very much appreciate you including me in your facility here. Now, looking around the room, I think I see just one bow tie. Is that right? Just one. I'm telling you, why don't you try? Oh, yes, two. That's great. I started wearing bow ties when I was young in high school. My father showed me, his father showed him. And there's a story associated with this, which I find remarkable. My grandfather was in the Rotary, and he attended a convention in Philadelphia. And even in those days, at the turn of the last century, people rented tuxedos. And the tuxedo came with a bow tie, untied bow tie.
Again, I want you guys to remember that even if today in 2022 you do not like who Bill Nye is, we are not here to champion Bill Nye. We are here to listen to what Bill Nye has to say. We are here to listen to what Ken Ham has to say and judge those ideas.
So he didn't know how to tie it. So wasn't sure what to do. He just took a chance. He went to the hotel room next door, knocked on the door. Excuse me, can you help me tie my tie? And the guy said, sure, lie down on the bed. So my grandfather, wanted to have the tie on, wasn't sure what he was getting into. So he is said to have lain on the bed, and the guy tied a perfect bow tie knot, and quite reasonably, my grandfather said, thank you. Why'd I have to lie down on the bed? The guy said, I'm an undertaker. That's really the only way. That story was presented to me as a true story. It may or may not be, but it gives you something to think about, and it's certainly something to remember.
Does it, though?
So here tonight, we're going to have...
I'm going to try not to stop it too much in their opening arguments, and then, because this is long, so I want to get through as much of it as possible. I do think that we don't necessarily need to watch the entire thing to have our own conversation, but I do want to get through as much of it as we can. So I'm going to let them go for a little bit, and then once they get into more of the meat of the argument, then we'll stop it a little bit more.
Two stories, and we can compare Mr. Ham's story to the story from what I will call the outside, from mainstream science. The question tonight is, does Ken Ham's creation model hold up? Is it viable? So let me ask you all, what would you be doing if you weren't here tonight? That's right, you'd be home watching CSI. CSI Petersburg. Is that coming? I think it's coming. And on CSI, there is no distinction made between historical science and observational science. These are constructs unique to Mr. Ham. We don't have these.
I know I said I wasn't going to pause it, but he really made a PowerPoint slideshow with 5 different CSI versions. Like, seems like you could have skipped that.
Anywhere in the world except here. Natural laws that applied in the past apply now. That's why they're natural laws. That's why we embrace them. That's how we made all these discoveries that enabled all this remarkable technology. So CSI is a fictional show, but it's based absolutely.
Okay, this is interesting. Indie film brings a great way to go through this. So, douche level. Let's keep it measured. Right now, we got Nye ahead at 6. I like this. I like this. I like this a lot. So keep updating me. Keep updating.
On real people doing real work. When you go to a crime scene and find evidence, you have clues about the past. And you trust those clues and you embrace them and you move forward to convict somebody. Mr. Ham and his followers have this remarkable view of a worldwide flood that somehow influenced everything that we observe in nature. A 500-foot wooden boat, 8 zookeepers for 14,000 individual animals, every land plant in the world underwater for a full year. I ask us all, is that really reasonable? You'll hear a lot about the Grand Canyon, I imagine, also, which is a remarkable place, and it has fossils. And the fossils in the Grand Canyon are found in layers. There is not a single place in the Grand Canyon where the fossils of one type of animal cross over into the fossils of another. In other words, when there was a big flood on the earth, you would expect drowning animals to swim up to a higher level. Not any one of them did, not a single one. If you could find evidence of that, my friends, you could change the world. Now, I just want to remind us all, there are billions of people in the world who are deeply religious.
All right, guys, I just dropped a new poll. Please don't answer it if you're not religious. I was gonna put an option in there if you're not. Just wait. I will end it and you will see. Hey, we got Miguel in the building. Miguel says, so they're going to have an argument about something neither one can prove. I don't think so. I don't think so. And the even if that is the case, what would be wrong with that? Is there a need for a concrete answer for every single thing that you talk about? Is it not useful for us to explore these ideas, whether or not we have a firm answer at the end? Is it not imperative that we have these conversations before we have a concrete answer in order to get to a concrete answer? So we'll see. Vision Plus says, even if Ken Ham secretly changes his mind, he would still be influential. He would still influence the same ideas of creationism because it's become his business. Yep.
Who get enriched, who have a wonderful sense of community from their religion. They worship together, they eat together, they live in their communities and enjoy each other's company. Billions of people, but these same people do not embrace the extraordinary view that the earth is somehow only 6,000 years old. That is unique. And here's my concern. What keeps the United States ahead, what makes the United States a world leader, is our technology, our new ideas, our innovations. If we continue to eschew science, eschew the process, and try to divide science into observational science and historic science, we are not going to move forward. We will not embrace natural laws. We will not make discoveries. We will not invent and innovate and stay ahead. So if you ask me if Ken Ham's creation model is viable, I say no. It is absolutely not viable. So stay with us over the next period, and you can compare my evidence to his. Thank you all very much.
All right, so I'm trying to figure this out here. Any Film says the Grand Canyon swimming up an allergy is a terrible analogy. I must have missed that. I didn't hear that part. One, the Grand Canyon didn't exist, at least to the extent it was billions of years ago or millions of years ago or whatever. I must have missed that piece. Yeah, I'm lost. Sorry.
Very nice start by both of our debaters here. And now each one will offer a 30-minute illustrated presentation to fully offer their case for us to consider. Mr. Ham, you're up.
So now that they're getting into the meat, they just kind of laid out their basic arguments. Now we'll start getting into the weeds a little bit. Any day now, pal.
Well, the debate topic was, is creation a viable model of origins in today's modern scientific era? And I made this statement at the end of my opening statement. Creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era. And I said, what we need to be doing is actually defining our terms, and particularly 3 terms: science, creation, and evolution. Now, I discussed the meaning of the word science and what is meant by experimental or observational science briefly, and that both creationists and evolutionists can be great scientists, for instance. I mentioned Craig Venter, a biologist. He's an atheist, and
he's separating. So it goes back and what was it? Empirical versus historical science. So he's making a claim that those are 2 different things. and that according to him, historical is better.
He was one of the first researchers to sequence the human genome. I also mentioned Dr. Raymond Damadian, who actually invented the MRI scanner. I want you to meet a biblical creationist who is a scientist and inventor.
Hi, my name is Dr. Raymond Damadian. I am a young earth creation scientist and believe that God created the world in 6 24-hour days, just as recorded in the book of Genesis. By God's grace and the devoted prayers of my godly mother-in-law, I invented the MRI scanner in 1969. The idea that scientists who believe the earth is 6,000 years old cannot do real science is simply wrong.
Well, he's most adamant about that. And actually,
I wouldn't disagree. I wouldn't disagree that they can't do science as long as they leave their religious beliefs outside of the laboratory. And some people can do that, but a lot more can't.
Revolutionized medicine, and he's a biblical creationist. And I encourage children to follow people like that and make them their heroes. Let me introduce you to another biblical creation scientist.
My name is Danny Faulkner. I received my PhD in astronomy from Indiana University. For 26 and a half years, I was professor at the University of South Carolina, Lancaster, where I hold the rank of Distinguished Professor Emeritus. Upon my retirement from the university in January of 2013, I joined the research staff at IndianJesus.
So he's brought up 3 people now. Who can name the logical fallacy? This is why we did this stream early. Who can name the logical fallacy that Ken Ham is already committing?
I'm a stellar astronomer. That means my primary interest is stars, but I'm particularly interested in the study of eclipsing binary stars. And I've published many articles in the astronomy literature, places such as the Astrophysical Journal, the Astronomical Journal, and the Observatory. There is nothing in observational astronomy that contradicts a recent creation.
I also mentioned
I would love to hear more about that position.
Dr. Stuart Burgess, Professor of Design, Engineering Design at Bristol University in England. Now, he designed a double-action worm gear set for the 3 hinges of the robotic arm on a very expensive satellite. And if that had not worked, if that gear set had not worked, the whole satellite would have been useless. Yet Dr. Burgess is a biblical creationist who believes just as I believe. Now, think about this for a moment. A scientist like Dr. Burgess, who believe in creation, just as I do, a small minority in the scientific world. But let's see what he says about scientists believing in creation.
I find that many of my colleagues in academia are sympathetic to the creationist viewpoint, including biologists. However, they are often afraid to speak out because of the criticisms they would get from the media and atheist lobby.
I agree. That's a real problem today.
So Division Plus is literally cherry picking. And yeah, I mean, the fact is, when you get to the upper echelons of like theoretical physics and stuff like that, you do get a lot of questions that, like, just to bring up string theory, as something that people are somewhat familiar with, where there's, the multiverse and all that stuff, where functionally there's not really a difference of saying, oh, well, a god did this and then nature did this. Like, there's such a push that to some people it doesn't matter. But y'all know that, especially with me and the semantics, it really, in fact, does matter. Because when most people are talking about God, they're not talking about some deistic force that is natural to the universe. They're talking about a man in the sky who listens to their prayers. Hey, we got Mike in the building. Bah, 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 bah. Glad you are here for this one, brother. It says, most religious people I know believe microevolution, not macroevolution. So from what I understand, is that there can be that means either there can be changes within a species, but a species cannot become another species. Is that position? My question would just be, why not?
We need to have freedom to be able to speak on these topics. I just want to say, by the way, that
because this is actually my dad's position. My dad believes this, and I don't really understand what his position is, but this is exactly what he says.
Non-Christian scientists, I should say, non-Christian scientists are really borrowing from the Christian worldview anyway to carry out their experimental observational science. Think about it. When they're doing observational science using a scientific method, they have to assume the laws of logic, they have to assume the laws of nature, they have to assume the uniformity of nature. I mean, think about it. If the universe came about by natural processes, where do the laws of logic come from? Did they just pop into existence? Are we in a stage now where we only have half logic? So you see, I have a question for
Boom! Mike W. got it exactly. The appeal to an unqualified authority. Now, if you are an astronomer or whatever, then you are a qualified authority in the area of astronomy, not in theism, not in religion. So just because you are smart and also you believe wrong things doesn't mean that those wrong things become right because you're smart in other ways. Got him, Mike. Got him.
How do you account for the laws of logic and the laws of nature from a naturalistic worldview that excludes the existence of God?
We don't have to. You're the one making the claim. We can just say, that's the intellectually honest position. But you are the one making the claim.
Now, in my opening statement, I also discussed a different type of science or knowledge, origins or historical science. See, again, there's a confusion here. There's a misunderstanding here. People, by and large, have not been taught to look at what you believe about the past as different to what you're observing in the present. You don't observe the past directly.
Look at this fucking picture. Like, what is this? So we're in the present here, and so either in the past, over the past billions of years, there was the Big Bang, which we know, all this evolution, which we know, or this. Okay, bro.
Even when you think about the creation account, I mean, we can't observe God creating. We can't observe the creation of Adam and Eve. We admit that.
Yeah, you can't observe something that's not happening.
To admit our beliefs about the past. But see, what you see in the present is very different. Even some public school textbooks, actually, well, they sort of acknowledge the difference between historical and observational science. Here is an earth science textbook that's used in public schools, and we read this. In contrast to physical geology, the aim of historical geology is to understand Earth's long history. And then they make the statement, historical geology, so we're talking about historical science, tries to establish a timeline of the vast number of physical and biological changes that have occurred in the past. We study physical geology before historical geology.
Yeah, not exactly well researched, and I think it's more of just a visual aid than supposed to be something that's representing actual science in any way.
We first must understand how Earth works before we try to unravel its past. In other words, we observe things in the present, and then, okay, we're assuming that that's always happened in the past, and we're going to try and figure out how this happened. See, there is a difference between what you observe and what happened in the past. Let me illustrate it this way. If Bill Nye...
There's another claim. There's a difference between what you observed and what happens in the past. Is there, though? There could be. There could be. If you're talking about something that happened, if you're talking about the Civil War. No, I did not observe that. But that doesn't mean that I can't know that happened. And then also, there could be things that I did observe. And for that matter, I could be wrong about what I thought I observed.
I went to the Grand Canyon. We could agree that that's a Coconino sandstone in the Hermit Shale, and there's the boundary. They're sitting one on top of the other. We could agree on that. Do you know what we would disagree on? I mean, we could even analyze the minerals and agree on that. But we would disagree on how long it took to get there. But see, none of us saw the sandstone or the shale being laid down. There's a supposed 10 million year gap there. But I don't see a gap. But that might be different to what Bill Nye would see. But see, there's a difference between what you actually observe directly and then your interpretation in regard to the past. When I was at the Goddard Space Center a number of years ago, I met creationists and evolutionists who were both working on the Hubble telescope. They agreed on how to build a Hubble telescope. You know what they disagreed on? Well, they disagreed on how to interpret the data the telescope obtained in regard to the age of the universe. And, we could go and talk about lots of other similar sorts of things. For instance, I've heard Bill Nye talk about how a smoke detector works using the radioactive element americium. And I totally agree with him on that. We agree how it works. We agree how radioactivity enables that to work. But if you're then going to use radioactive elements and talk about the age of the Earth, you've got a problem because you weren't there. We got to understand parent elements, daughter elements, and so on.
That's a great point, Division Plus, that people will act like they know that it's this simple straight line when clearly thinking that it is a straight line is an ignorance of what it is. That is not how it worked. We know that's not how it worked. So if you think that that's silly to say that it worked like that, well, I agree. That's not how it worked. That is so common. People who don't understand what the theory of evolution is will be so, oh, that's so silly. What? You think we came from apes? Well, why are there still apes? Tell me you don't know the theory of evolution without telling me you don't know anything about the theory of evolution. Oh, come on. We're doing so good.
Agree whether you're a creationist or evolutionist on the technology to put the rover on Mars, but we're going to disagree on how to interpret the origin of Mars. I mean, there are some people that believe there was even a global flood on Mars and there's no liquid water on Mars. But you know, we're going to disagree maybe on our interpretation of origins, and you can't prove either way, because not from an observational science perspective, because we've only got the present. Creationists and evolutionists both work on medicines and vaccines. You see, it doesn't matter whether you're a creationist or an evolutionist. All scientists have the same experimental or observational science. So I have a question for Bill Nye. Can you name one piece of technology that could only have been developed starting with a belief in molecules to man evolution?
So I actually want to break that down. Let's see. Oh, come on. So he says, can you name one piece of technology that could only have been developed starting with a belief in molecules to man evolution? I have no idea what that question means. I have no idea what that question means. Can you name one piece of technology? So he's asking for a piece of technology that could only have been developed starting with a belief in molecules. Okay. So accepting evolution, one piece of technology that can only be developed. What are you talking about? Technology and evolution are not, I mean, they're related, obviously, because as part of nature, what we do is natural. But I don't really, beyond that, I don't really see a connection between technology and evolution. But
that could only have been developed starting with a belief in molecules to man evolution. Now, here's another important fact. Creationists and evolutionists all have the same evidence. Bill Nye and I have the same Grand Canyon. We don't disagree on that. We will have the same fish fossil. This is one from the Creation Museum. The same dinosaur skeletons, the same animals, the same humans, the same DNA, the same radioactive decay elements that we see. We have the same universe. Actually, we all have the same evidences. It's not the evidences that are different. It's a battle over the same evidence in regard to how we interpret the past. And you know why that is? Because it's really a battle over worldviews and starting points. It's a battle over philosophical worldviews and starting points, but the same evidence. Now, I admit my starting point is that God is the ultimate authority. But if someone doesn't accept that, then man has to be the ultimate authority. And that's really the difference when it comes down to it. You see, I've been emphasizing the difference between historical origin science, knowledge about the past when you weren't there, and we need to understand that we weren't there. Or experimental or observational science, using your five senses in the present, the scientific method, what you can directly observe, test, repeat. There's a big difference between those two. And that's not what's being taught in our public schools. And that's why kids aren't being taught to think critically and correctly about the origins issue. But you know, it's also important.
Yeah, just teach God did it. That's critically thinking. God did it.
Understand, when talking about creation evolution, both involve historical science and observational science. You see, the role of observational science is this.
I think I've also watched this when it first came out in 2017. And I do think that there is the argument that Bill Nye can take here is that there is no difference. You're making up this difference between observational science and experimental science. Those to me, I've never heard these terms. These seem to be a distinction that you've made that you're using to prop up your argument. I've never heard that distinction before Ken Ham. Mike says, there's evidence of Santa Claus. He comes out every year in front of the department stores, eats cookies, and eats the cookies on Christmas morning. Exactly. Case solved. Case closed.
It can be used to confirm or otherwise one's historical science based on one's starting point. Now, when you think about the debate topic and what I affirmed concerning creation, if our origins or historical science based on the Bible, the Bible's account of origins is true, then there should be predictions from this that we can test using observational science. And there are. For instance, based on the Bible, we'd expect to find evidence confirming an intelligence produced life. We'd expect to find evidence confirming after their kind. The Bible says God made kinds of animals and plants after their kind, implying each kind produces its own, not that one kind changes into another.
Is that who said it, Mike or Miguel? One of you guys? Is that what he's referring to now? Is this the difference between the micro and macro evolution that you guys are talking about?
Find evidence confirming a global flood of Noah's day.
Like that what did he say? That like kind and species or something. I think it was
their kind. The Bible says God made kinds of animals and plants after their kind, implying each kind produces its own, not that one kind changes into another.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what people mean when they're saying microevolution versus macroevolution.
You'd expect to find evidence confirming a global flood of Noah's day, evidence confirming one race of humans, because we all go back to Adam and Eve. Biologically, that would mean there's one race. Evidence confirming the Tower of Babel, that God gave different languages. Evidence confirming a young universe. Now, I can't
Isn't it the Tower of Babel?
go through all of those, but a couple of them we'll look at briefly. After their kind, evidence confirming that. In the Creation Museum, we have a display featuring replicas, actually, of Darwin's finches. They're called Darwin's finches. Darwin collected.
Anybody not familiar with the importance of Darwin's finches? We can go over it very quickly.
Finches from the Galapagos and took them back to England, and we see the different species, the different beak sizes here. And you know, from the specimens that Darwin obtained in the Galapagos,
well, he's explaining it, so if you're not sure, pay attention.
He actually pondered these things, and how do you explain this? And in his notes, actually, he came up with this diagram here, a tree, and he actually said, "I think." So he was talking about different species, and maybe those species.
If he's trying to say that because Darwin said, "I think," not "I know," therefore it's not true, it's very well documented that the theory of evolution was not established as a theory until way later. Way later. It was just a hypothesis. But because of science, we were able to upgrade it into a theory.
These came from some common ancestor. Actually, when it comes to finches, we actually would agree as creationists that different finch species came from a common ancestor, but a finch is what they would have to come from. You see, Darwin wasn't just thinking about species. Darwin had a much bigger picture in mind. When you look at The Origin of Species and read that book, you'll find he made this statement: "From such low and intermediate form, both animals and plants may have been developed, and if we admit this, we must likewise admit that all organic beings which have ever lived on this earth may be descended from some one primordial form." So he had in mind what we today know as an evolutionary tree of life, that all life has arisen from some primordial form.
Again, that would be the primordial form down here, and that branches off, and we get, the dinosaurs early on, and as time goes on, we get people.
Now, when you consider the classification system, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, we would say, as creationists, and we have many creation scientists who've researched this, and for lots of reasons, I would say the kind in Genesis 1 really is more at the family level of classification. For instance, there's one dog kind, there's one cat kind, even though you have different genera, different species. That would mean, by the way, you didn't need anywhere near the number of animals on the ark as people think. You wouldn't need all the species of dogs, just two, not all the species of cats, just two. And you see, based on...
That's still stupid, because you'd still need 2 lions, or at least 2 big cats, and 2, I don't even know what the fuck you call them, like game animals, like deer, gazelle, whatever. You'd still need conflicting animals that are on a boat for 40 days. What are they eating?
The biblical account there in Genesis 1, creationists have drawn up what they believe is a creation orchard. In other words, they're saying, look, there's great variation in the genetics of dogs and finches and so on. And so over time, particularly after Noah's flood, you'd expect that if there were 2 dogs, for instance, you could end up with different species of dogs, because there's an incredible amount of variability in the genes of any creature. And so you'd expect these different species up here, but there's limits. Dogs will always be dogs, finches will always be finches. Now,
sure about that?
As a creationist, I maintain that observational science actually confirms this model based on the Bible. For instance, take dogs. Okay, in a scientific paper dated January 2014, that's this year, scientists working at the University of California stated this: "We provide several lines of evidence supporting a single origin for dogs and disfavoring alternative models in which dog lineages arise separately from geographically distinct wolf populations." And they put this diagram in the paper. By the way, that diagram is very, very similar to this diagram that creationists proposed based upon the creation account in Genesis. In other words, you have a common dog ancestor that gives rise to the different species of dogs, and that's exactly what we're saying here. Now, in the Creation Museum, we actually show the finches here, and you can see the finches with their different beaks beside dog skulls, different species of dogs. By the way, there's more variation in the dog skulls here than there are in these finches. Yet the dogs, well, that's never used as an example of evolution, but the finches are, particularly in the public school textbooks. Students are taught, see the changes that are occurring here? And here's another problem that we've got. Not only has the word science been hijacked by secularists, I believe the word evolution has been hijacked by secularists. The word evolution has been hijacked using what I call a bait and switch.
What you call bait and switch. So you're saying bait and switch. What you call bait and switch. So it's like a... never heard that before. What you call a bait and switch.
Let me explain to you. The word evolution is being used in public school textbooks, and we often see it in documentaries and so on. It's used for observable changes that we would agree with, and then used for unobservable changes, such as molecules to man. Let me explain to you what's really going on, because I was a science teacher in the public schools, and I know what the students were taught, and I check the public school textbooks anyway to know what they're taught. See, students are taught today, look, there's all these different animals, plants, but they're all part of this great big tree of life that goes back to some primordial form. And look, we see changes in finches, changes in dogs, and so on. Now, we don't deny the changes. You see that. You see different species of finches, different species of dogs, but then they put it all together in this evolutionary tree, but that's what you don't observe. You don't observe that. That's belief there. That's their historical science. I would say was wrong. But you know what you do observe? You do observe different species of dogs, different.
Hey, we got Divining Rod in the building. Bam, 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 bam. And again, you know it, brother. You know it. Got to educate the masses, and hey, maybe educate myself. Because this is exactly why I want to start here with this young earth creationist stuff. I was saying, I'm sure a lot of you who are religious are not young earth creationists. I'm sure a lot of you have different levels of belief in things like evolution, the Big Bang, so on and so forth. But if we start here, then going forward, we will all be on the same page. So welcome, Divining Rod. Welcome.
Pieces of finches, but then there are limits, and you don't see one kind changing into another. Actually, we're told that if you teach creation in the public schools, that's teaching religion. If you teach evolution, that's science. And I'm going to say, wait a minute. Actually, the creation model here, based upon the Bible, observational science confirms this. This is what you observe. You don't observe.
Does it, though?
This tree. Actually, it's the public school textbooks that are teaching a belief, imposing it on students, and they need to be teaching them observational science to understand the reality of what's happening. Now, what we found is that public school textbooks present the evolutionary tree as science, but reject the creation orchard as religion. But observational science confirms the creation orchard. So public school textbooks are rejecting observational science and imposing a naturalistic religion on students. The word evolution has been hijacked using a bait and switch to indoctrinate students to accept evolutionary belief as observational science. Let me introduce you to another scientist, Richard Lenski, Michigan State University. He's a great scientist. He's known for culturing E. coli in the lab. And he found there were some E. coli that actually seemed to develop the ability to grow on substrate, on citrate in substrate. But Richard Lenski is here mentioned in this book, and it's called Evolution in the Lab. So the ability to grow on citrate is said to be evolution. And there are those that say, hey, this is against the creationists. For instance, Jerry Coyne from University of Chicago says, Lenski's experiment is also yet another poke in the eye for anti-evolutionists. He says the thing I like most is that it says you can get these complex traits evolving by a combination of unlikely events. But is it a poke in the eye for anti-evolutionists? Is it really seeing complex traits evolving? What does it mean that some of these bacteria are able to grow on citrate?
If you had to guess what this guy did for a living, what would you think it was?
Let me introduce you to another biblical creationist who is a scientist.
Hi, my name is Dr. Andrew Favich. I got my PhD from the University of Oklahoma in microbiology. I teach at Liberty University, and I do research on E. coli in the intestine. I've published in secular journals from the American Society for Microbiology, including infection immunity and applied environmental microbiology, as well as several others. My work has been cited even the past year in the journals Nature, Science Translational Medicine, Public Library of Science, Public Library of Science Genetics. It's cited regularly in those journals. And while I was taught nothing but evolution, I don't accept that position. I do my research from a creation perspective. When I look at the evidence that people cite of E. coli supposedly evolving over 30 years, over 30,000 generations in the lab, and people say that it is now able to grow on citrate, I don't deny that it grows on citrate, but it's not.
So all this guy is showing is that, again, he is a good scientist who has stupid religious beliefs. That doesn't seem like a proof for anything. This is just yet another, now the fourth, appeal to unqualified authority. Diviner said, he works at Jiffy Lube and over-tightens the drain plug every time. God damn it, Andrew.
Not any kind of new information. The information's already there, and it's just a switch that gets turned on and off. And that's what they reported in there. There's nothing new.
See, students need to be told what's really going on here. Certainly there's change, but it's not change necessary for molecules to man. Now, we could look at other predictions. What about evidence confirming one race? Well, when we look at the human population, we see lots of differences. But based on Darwin's ideas of human evolution as presented in The Descent of Man, I mean, Darwin did teach in The Descent of Man, there were lower races and higher races. Would you believe that back in the 1900s, one of the most popular biology textbooks used in the public schools in America taught this? At the present time, there exist upon earth 5 races or varieties of man, and finally, the highest type of all, the Caucasians, represented by the civilized white inhabitants of Europe and America. Can you imagine if that was in the public schools today? And yet, that's what was taught, but it was based on Darwin's ideas that are wrong. You have a wrong foundation. You're going to have a wrong worldview. Now, had they started from
much like your scientist, your creationist scientist friends, who can get some things right and also be very wrong about things. Yes, Charles Darwin was not correct about everything that he ever said. That does not mean that this one theory that he had, or it's one hypothesis, was not true. As the kids would say, cope harder!
From the Bible and from the creation account in the Bible, what does it teach? Well, we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. We go through the Tower of Babel, different languages, so different people groups form distinct characteristics. But we'd say.
What is that? So, biblical, the different people groups and cultures. I don't even know what this is supposed to represent. Like, is this a hierarchy?
You know what? That means there's biologically only one race of humans. Well, I mentioned Dr. Venter before.
But there's not only one race of humans. Unless you're saying whether the human race is one species, then you would be correct. So what's the problem?
And he was a researcher with the Human Genome Project. And you'll remember in the year 2000, this was headline news. And what we read was this. They had put together a draft of the entire sequence of the human genome and unanimously declared there is only one race, the human race. Wow, who would have guessed? But you see, there we have observational science confirming the creation account, not confirming at all Darwin's ideas.
How does there being one human race have anything to do with evolution as we understand it today? Not as how Charles Darwin initially wrote it down, but as we understand it today. The notes of Charles Darwin as he was in the Galapagos figuring this shit out. Yeah, it wasn't perfect. That's how science works. We're able to throw out the shit that didn't work and keep all the shit that did. And would you look at that? There was a ton of people, there's a ton of evidence to support his original core theory. Mike says, the chart of people looks like you, IndianJesus. I look like all people? Is that what you're... that's racist! That's racist!
Now, there's much more that could be said on each of these topics. Obviously, you can't do that in a short time like this, and you can do a lot more research. I suggest you visit...
So, predictions based on the Bible. Let's see what we got here. Evidence confirming intelligence produced life. How was that a prediction? Evidence confirming after their kind. Evidence confirming global flood. Evidence confirming one race. The Tower of Babel and a young universe. He has not presented anything to support any of these claims, except for the fact that other people who know about other stuff agree with him about this stuff. That's not how it works.
Our website at Answers in Genesis for a lot more information. So, the debate topic, is creation a viable model of origins in today's scientific era?
Nope.
I said we need to define the terms, and particularly the term science and the term evolution. And I believe we need to understand how they're being used to impose an anti-God religion on generations of unsuspecting students.
Now, again, this is framed very differently from 2017 when I thought of an anti-God religion on generations of unsuspecting students. I had no idea that wokeism was going to become what it was. That doesn't mean that God exists. Those are two different ideas. And so I do agree that the lack of proper messaging on both sides has led to this anti-God religion, aka the government, that so many atheists treat dogmatically. So I don't disagree there, but not really relevant.
You see, I keep emphasizing we do need to understand the difference between experimental or observational science and historical science.
But you don't tell us why. You just say it.
You know what? The secularists don't like me doing this because they don't want to admit that there's a belief aspect to what they're saying. And there is. And they can't get away from it.
Of course there is. But not all beliefs are the same. Again, is it the same thing for me to believe that a God exists? For you to believe that I'm actually a human being who's sitting in my home and not some AI creation? You don't know. I could be not a real person. I could be somebody made up. I could be a complete program simulation. You have no idea. But I'm going to guess that you believe that I'm a real person. And so belief and faith, yes, there are things that all people have in different areas of life, but there are different types of belief, and there are reasons to believe some things over others. Hey, we got JR in the building. I'm glad you Christians are here. I want the Christians in the building. I want this to be a spirited conversation. And I find it very useful when talking to religious people as an atheist to not talk about what do you personally believe. We take somebody else's beliefs and look at those. It's much easier for those of you who have beliefs to not feel like your personal beliefs are being attacked. And I understand how that feels. Like I said, I was brought up Catholic. I was fighting against atheism long before I was an atheist. And it you get very defensive. You get this personal attachment to your own personal beliefs because they're big things. You believe in a God, that's a big thing. And so when we can pick apart somebody else's beliefs, it makes it a little bit easier. Glad you're here, JR. Glad you are
Let me illustrate
here.
this with a statement from Bill Nye.
You can show the Earth is not flat. You can show the Earth is not 10,000 years old.
By the way, I agree. You can show the Earth is not flat.
Yeah, do we need to go through that? I mean, I feel like we should all be on the same page, unless there's, I mean, if one of you is a flat earther, I don't really care. But if everybody here is on some flat earth shit, then we definitely got to cover that. Jairus, I believe humans are devolving into androids with phones, with phone hands. Is that devolving, or is that evolving? We didn't have it before, so it may not be it may not be societally desirable, but it doesn't mean it's not evolution.
A video from the Galileo spacecraft showing the Earth and speeded up, of course, but spinning. You can see it's a sphere. You can observe that. You can't observe the age of the Earth. You don't see that. You see, again, I emphasize there's a big difference between historical science, talking about the past, and observational science, talking about the present. And I believe what's happening is this, that students are being indoctrinated by the confusion of terms, the hijacking of the word science and the hijacking of the word evolution in a bait and switch. Let me illustrate further with this video clip, because here I assert that Bill Nye is equating observational science with historical science. And I also say it's not a mystery when you understand the difference.
Apparently, people with these deeply held religious beliefs, they embrace that whole literal interpretation of the Bible as written in English as a worldview. And at the same time, they accept aspirin, antibiotic drugs, airplanes, but they're able to hold these two worldviews. And this is a mystery.
Actually, I suggest to you it's not a mystery. You see, when I'm talking about antibiotics, aspirin, smoke detectors, jet planes, that's Ken Ham, the observational science bloke. I'm an Australian. We call guys blokes, okay? But when you're talking about creation in thousands of years or the age of the Earth, that's Ken Ham, the historical science bloke. I'm willing to admit that.
So again, he's making this distinction between observational science and historical science. Or empirical, whatever. There's two different types of sciences. And I've never heard that before or since, frankly. But
now, when Bill Nye is talking about aspirin, antibiotics, jet planes, smoke detectors, he does a great job at that. I used to enjoy watching him on TV too. That's Bill Nye, the observational science guy. But when he's talking about evolution of millions of years, I'm challenging him that's Bill Nye, the historical science guy. And I challenge the evolutionists to admit the belief aspects of their particular worldview. Now,
it's so weird to hear someone say evolutionists as if that's a collection. You know, so often we, as an atheist, I get grouped into atheism as a belief system, and the atheists do this, and the atheists believe that, and the atheists. It's like that's not how it works. And it's the same thing if you believe in evolution. All of an evolutionist doesn't tell you anything about the person, except the fact that they believe in evolution.
Now, at the Creation Museum, we're only too willing to admit our beliefs based upon the Bible, but we also teach people the difference between beliefs and what one can actually observe and experiment with in the present. I believe we're teaching people to think critically and to think in the right terms about science. I believe it's the creationists that should be educating the kids out there, because we're teaching them the right way to think. we admit our origins of historical science is based upon the Bible, but I'm just challenging evolutionists to admit the belief aspects of evolution and be upfront about the difference here. As I said, I'm only too willing to admit my historical science based on the Bible. And let me further go on and define the term creation as we use it. By creation, we mean here at Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum, we mean the account based on the Bible. Yes, I take Genesis as literal history, as Jesus did. And here at the Creation Museum, we walk people through that history. We walk them through creation, a perfect creation. God made Adam and Eve, land animal kind, sea creatures, and so on. And then sin and death entered the world. So there was no death before sin. That means how can you have billions of dead things before man sinned? And then the catastrophe of Noah's flood. If there was a global flood, you'd expect to find billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. I had to say that because a lot of our supporters would want me to. And what do you find? Billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. Confusion, the Tower of Babel, God gave.
That's a complete misunderstanding of how fossil records work. But I know that Bill Nye goes into it, and I want to get them more than me. So yeah, he's just talking bullshit right now. He's just spewing a bunch of shit. He's got a nice, clean slideshow. He has other scientists backing him up, but he's not saying anything. He's just saying things. He's not making an argument.
Different.
Miguel says, I have a hard time picking a side in things I can't know, but if forced, I would roll with intelligent design over an accident. Well, that is not the argument, my friend, which is why I suggest you continue watching and let's get into the actual argument before we make our decisions on what our conclusions are.
Languages, so you get different people groups. So this is the geological, astronomical, anthropological, biological history as recorded in the Bible. So this is concerning what happened in the past.
Because remember, aside from opening statements, Bill Nye has not even spoken yet.
Explains the present. And then, of course, that God's Son stepped into history to be Jesus Christ, the God-man, to die on the cross, be raised from the dead, and one day there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth to come. And, not only is this an understanding of history to explain the geology, biology, astronomy, and so on to connect the present to the past, but it's also a foundation for our whole worldview. For instance,
Mike is absolutely right in saying a lot of atheists think the word belief is a bad word. Belief, faith, God, religion, all that kind of stuff. It just tunes them out. And that's why I talk so much about how to speak about our values without invoking religion. But I would disagree with the overall sentiment. I don't think that it's well, you did say some. So let me just say then I'll agree with some. But I do think that your average person who simply isn't into religion, not your militant atheist person who that's their identity, but your average atheist who just doesn't think about it. Maybe they grew up without it. Their parents just never introduced it, just not a part of their life. Understand what the fuck, what belief means. They just don't believe in that. And so I would I appreciate you pointing that out, but I would encourage you to understand further that it's the people who are getting the attention for being atheists that as atheists. Most people, as the census trends are showing, the nuns is the largest religious group in America. We say the nuns because it's following no particular religion. Now, that doesn't mean those people don't believe in a God. But I think most people do understand the different degrees of belief.
In Matthew 19, when Jesus was asked about marriage, he said, have you not read? He which made the beginning made them male and female. And said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they'll be one flesh. He quoted from Genesis as literal history, Genesis 1 and 2. God invented marriage, by the way. That's where marriage comes from. And it's to be a man and a woman. And not only marriage, ultimately, every single biblical doctrine of theology, directly or indirectly, is founded in Genesis. Why is there sin in the world? Genesis. Why is there death? Genesis. Why do we wear clothes? Genesis. Why did Jesus die on the cross? Genesis. It's a very important book.
So if Genesis is the cause for all of these things, why don't we just burn the Bible?
It's foundational to all Christian doctrine. And you see, when we look at that, what I call the 7 C's of history that we walk people through here at the museum, think about how it all connects together. A perfect creation, it'll be perfect again in the future. Sin and death entered the world. That's why God's Son died on the cross, and to conquer death and offer a free gift of salvation. The flood of Noah's day, a reminder that the flood was a judgment because of man's wickedness, but at the same time, a message of God's grace and salvation, as Noah and his family had to go through a door to be saved. So we need to go through a door to be saved. Jesus Christ said, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he'll be saved. And we make no apology about the fact that what we're on about is this. If you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart God has raised him from the dead.
He said, mouthful of Jesus. We got no freedoms in the building. He says, I don't believe in the Big Bang. It is fake. Hello, Jesus and Jesus Cat. Welcome, No Freedoms. So you don't believe in the Big Bang. Fair enough. That is precisely what we are exploring tonight. So welcome. Glad to have you. Let's see if Bill Nye and a science guy here, not the most esteemed person, but let's see if he can change your mind.
You'll be saved. Now, as soon as I say that, people say, see, if you allow creation in schools, for instance, if you allow students to even hear about it, this is religion. You know,
it is religion. Saying that God created the universe is religion. There's no two ways about that, homie.
Let me illustrate this, talking about a recent battle in Texas over textbooks in the public school. A newspaper report said this: textbook and classroom curriculum battles have long ranged in Texas, pitting creationists, those who see God's hand in the creation of the universe, against academics. Stop right there. Notice, creationists, academics. Creationists can't be academics. Creationists can't be scientists. See, it's the way things are worded out there.
So now he's just taking a victim complex. He's not even making an argument. He's just saying, see, they wouldn't even let me talk. Bro, you're on stage. You have 30 minutes of uninterrupted time to speak. Stop bitching and make your argument.
It's an indoctrination that's going on. Who worry about religious and political ideology trumping scientific fact. Wait a minute, what do I mean by science? You're talking about what you observe, or you're talking about your beliefs about the past?
Either, because again, that is not a meaningful distinction.
Now, Kathy Miller is the president of the Texas Freedom Network, and she's vocally spoken out. She's spoken out about this textbook battle there in Texas. And the mission statement of the organization she's president of says, the Texas Freedom Network advances a mainstream agenda of religious freedom and individual liberties to counter the religious right. Religious freedom, individual liberties. And then she makes this statement, science education, what does she mean by science, should be based on mainstream science education, not on personal ideological beliefs of unqualified.
Oh, so you're saying that somebody's not making a distinction between these two different types of science that nobody else has heard of except for you talking right now. Does that tell us that she's uneducated? Or that you, Kenham, are full of shit? Freedom says evolution is not always good. Nature effed up a couple times. Exactly. You are exactly correct. Yeah, so JR was saying, I believe humans are devolving into androids with phone hands. And that is, that occurrence is true, but that's not devolving. That's just evolving in a way that is not preferable. You know, most of the species who's ever existed evolved to a certain point and then died out. So just because they died out doesn't mean there was no evolution along the way. Yeah, fuck iPhone.
Qualified reviewers. Wait a minute, they want religious liberty and not personal ideological beliefs? I assert this. Public school textbooks are using the same word science for observational and historical science. They arbitrarily define science as naturalism, and outlaw the supernatural. They present molecules to man evolution as fact, and they're imposing the religion of naturalism on generations of students. They're imposing their ideology on the students, that everything's...
Science is not an ideology. Saying that the droplets, you've got to get the jab. That's much closer to ideology. That's more dogma. But the fact is, we know now, due to science, how much bullshit there was when it came to the Rona stuff. So was that observational or was that historical? Does it fucking matter? Is there a difference? All it does is debunk your point.
Explained by natural processes. That is a religion. What does she mean by religious liberty? They tolerate their religion.
Yeah. Saying that if you send a text message on your phone and believing that it's going to get to to the person who you sent it to, That's religious. That's religious. Gail says, we need a third guy to argue we are an experiment done by a race of space aliens. That's me. That's me.
See, the battle is really about authority. It's more than just science or evolution or creation. It's about who is the authority in this world, man or God.
Man.
If you start with naturalism, then what about morals? Who decides right and wrong? Well, it's subjective.
Man.
Marriage, well, whatever you want it to be. Get rid of old people. I mean, why?
I am in favor of euthanasia.
No, I mean, they're just animals. They're costing us a lot of money.
Correct.
Abortion, get rid of spare cats, get rid of spare kids. We're all animals. But if you start from...
See, that's again, a straw man, because those are not all the same things. But we don't need to get into that. Hey, we got Connor Flynn in the building. Love seeing the new name. Welcome, brother. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So yeah, we were just going through the Bill Nye and Ken Ham debate about young Earth creationism. Connor says they're acting like they don't just teach the same thing every year. I'm in 12th grade, but science is proven, and most of religion is not. So this guy confuses me. Yep. I don't have anything to add to that. Perfect comment. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. The reason that when I was at 12th grade in 2008, that I learned the same things that you're learning about biology and science and all that stuff is because it's proven. Again, there's a whole conversation about politics and being injected and taking over and all that stuff, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I don't going back to this guy confused me. Yeah, like who? How did you get there? How did you get there? Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Freedom says a lot of science books are wrong. I still remember reading a lot of BS. I hope those space aliens are not like humans, or I would be scared shitless. Correct. A lot of science books are wrong. How do we know that? How do we know that some of the things in science textbooks are incorrect? More science. Not religion. More science. Science is a process to understand the reality of our universe. It is an ongoing process. Nobody has claimed that we or any one person understands the entirety, the entire picture of what reality is. So yes, there are things that science cannot answer. There are things that science has gotten wrong. The only reason we know that they're wrong is because better science came along.
In God's word, there are moral absolutes. God decides right and wrong. Marriage, one man and one woman. Sanctity of life. We care for all people. They're made in the image of God. Life begins at fertilization, so abortion is killing a human being. We do see the collapse of Christian morality in our culture and increasing moral relativism because generations of kids are being taught the religion of naturalism and that the Bible can't be trusted. And so again, I say, creation is the only viable model of historical science confirmed by observational science in today's modern scientific era.
He slipped in another straw man that naturalism is a religion, and it may be a philosophy, it may be a way of thinking, it may be a perspective. It is not a religion. In order for something to be a religion, it has to have prescriptions, things that you should do. Naturalism is a description of the world. It is not telling you to do this or not do that. That is the realm of religion.
You know what? I'm a science teacher. I want to see kids taught science. I love science.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, man, I feel bad for those kids.
I want to see more Dr. Damadians in the world. You know, if we teach them the whole universe is a result of natural processes and not designed by a creator God, they might be looking in the...
Then we can just stop. We can just stop doing science because we've got all the answers already. They're in the Bible. We don't need to do science. Everybody who takes this position anywhere in history always thinks that we already have all the answers. Those answers always being God. You think they're like, no, you're wrong. When Galileo talked about a heliocentric universe, I think they killed him. Did they? I don't remember if they killed him, but they certainly persecuted him. And the fact is, he was correct, but it went against the Bible. So off we got.
wrong places or have the wrong idea when they're looking at the creation in regard to how you develop technology, because if they look on it as just random processes, that could totally influence the way they think. If they understand it was a perfect world marred by sin, that could have a great effect on how they then look for overcoming diseases and problems in the world. I want children to be taught the right foundation, that there's a God who created them, who loves them, who died on the cross for them, and that they're special. They're made in the image of God.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ham. We can applaud Mr. Ham's presentation.
The one thing I want you guys to pay attention to is it was not easy to listen to Ken Ham. You really had to pay attention. That PowerPoint was very much needed. Let's see how much easier it is to listen to Bill Nye.
And you know, it did occur to me when you had my old friend Larry King up there, you know, you could have just asked him. He's been around a long time. He could probably answer for all of us.
Come on.
Ham, I learned something. Thank you. But let's take it back around to the question at hand. Does Ken Ham's creation model hold up? Is it viable? So
Nope.
For me, of course, well, take a look. We are here in Kentucky on layer upon layer upon layer of limestone. I stopped at the side of the road today and picked up just a piece of limestone that has a fossil right there. Now, in these many, many layers, in this vicinity of Kentucky, there are coral animals, fossil, zooxanthellae. And when you look at it closely, you can see that they live their entire lives. They lived typically 20 years, sometimes more than that, if the water conditions are correct. And so we are standing on millions of layers of ancient life. How could those animals have lived their entire life and formed these layers in just 4,000 years? There isn't enough time since Mr. Ham's flood for this limestone that we're standing on to have come into existence. My scientific.
So again, there's a claim. There simply is not enough time within the last 6,000 years for what I'm holding in my hand to be created. That's a claim. So let's go back to Notepad. Not. Oh Jesus. No. Whoops. Sorry about that. All right. So not enough time to create. Okay, take two. Not enough time. Not enough time. Good enough. Mike says, I watched this debate before, I think. They are both not good at debate. I agree with you, but the other stuff that I was looking at is just a little bit more it builds on this type of argument, this type of conversation. So, you know, like I said in the beginning, we're starting here. And I know a lot of you who are Christians are not young earth creationists, but we got to start somewhere. And I think this is a good place to start, that we can all agree that Ken Ham is crazy. So if we can all agree there, then okay, where is that middle ground? Who is a Christian that we do like, that we can all agree on? I wasn't here there. And then who are the atheists who aren't so angry that we can listen to as well? So Indie Film gives us an update of the current douche level. Ham is at 3 and Nye is at 9. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, history fucked up. Sure. Yep. Boom, 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 boom. Claim without evidence and struggle street. Exactly. Right. That's how it goes. Connor says, I lost faith in humanity. I just saw a dude make a candy corn grilled cheese a sandwich, and Bill Nye is the GOAT. Fair enough. I am a fan of candy corn. I do think that it gets way too much hate, but don't know if I put it on grilled cheese. Gail says, I think you can find scientists that believe intelligent design that are not religious nuts. I agree. That doesn't mean that they're right, though.
Colleagues go to places like Greenland, the Arctic, they go to Antarctica, and they drill into the ice with hollow drill bits. It's not that extraordinary. Many of you have probably done it yourselves. They're drilling other things, hole saws to put locks in doors, for example. And we pull out long cylinders of ice, long ice rods. And these are made of snow. And by long tradition, it's called snow ice. And snow ice forms over the winter as snowflakes fall and are crushed down by subsequent layers. They're crushed together and trapping the little bubbles. And the little bubbles must needs be ancient atmosphere. There's nobody running around with a hypodermic needle squirting ancient atmosphere into the bubbles. And we find certain of these cylinders to have 680,000 layers. 680,000 snow, winter, summer cycles.
So in case you just missed that, he's talking about they drill and they get this long cylinder of snow ice out of the earth. And it show what did he say? 600,000 cycles. And so it has these snow, these winter and summer cycles.
How could it be that just 4,000 years ago, all of this ice formed? Let's just run some numbers. This is some scenes from lovely Antarctic. Let's say we have 680,000 layers of snow ice and 4,000 years since the Great Flood. That would mean we'd need 170 winter, summer cycles every year for the last 4,000 years.
So let's, again, taking a look at this, that if we're to see that there's over 600,000 layers of ice, and there's only been 4,000 years since the flood, how has there been 170 years or 170 winter summer cycles in that time?
I mean, wouldn't someone have noticed that? Wow. Wouldn't someone have noticed that there's been winter, summer 170 times one year? If we go to California, we find enormous stands of bristlecone pines. Some of them are over 6,000 years old, 6,800 years old. There's a famous tree in Sweden, Old Hiko, is 9,550 years old. How could these trees be there if there was an enormous flood just 4,000 years ago? You can try this yourself, everybody. I don't mean to be mean to trees, but get a sapling and put it underwater for a year. It will not survive in general, nor will its seeds. They just won't make it. So how could these trees be that old if the earth is only 4,000 years old? Now, when we go to the Grand Canyon, which is an astonishing place, and I recommend to everybody in the world to someday visit the Grand Canyon, you find layer upon layer of ancient rocks. And if there was this enormous flood that you speak of, wouldn't there have been churning and bubbling and roiling? How would these things have settled out? Your claim that they settled out in an extraordinary short amount of time is, for me, not satisfactory. You can look at these rocks. You can look at rocks that are younger. You can go to seashores where there's sand. This is what geologists on the outside do, study the rate at which soil is deposited at the end of rivers and deltas. And we can see that it takes a long, long time for sediments to turn to stone. Also, in this picture, you can see where one type of sediment has intruded on another type. Now, if that was uniform, wouldn't we expect it all to be even without intrusion? Furthermore, you can find places in the Grand Canyon where you see an ancient riverbed on that side going to an ancient riverbed on that side. And
so in case you missed that, if there was a flood, we wouldn't see the patterns in the rock that we do. Listen to it one more time. Decides to play. We would expect that we would have a different pattern in the rock formations.
Uniform. Wouldn't we expect it all to be even without intrusion? Furthermore, you can find places in the Grand Canyon where you see...
meaning that all of it wouldn't be as clearly defined as this, because this, this was a period of time. This layer got built, and then this layer got built, and then this layer got... If it was all flooded, why would it look like that? Hey, we got Kid with HO3 puffin' or vaping. Welcome. Yep, I got my my fume here as well. Trying to quit. Welcome to the party. We are just talking about Bill Nye versus Ken Ham. Does God exist? Welcome. Anyone says, isn't there scientific consensus that there was some type of global flood? Perhaps, but not in the sense that there was an ARK, and that, I mean, a global flood is not the same thing as the story of Noah's Ark. I don't think so. I don't think there was some type of global flood in the in the way that was talked about. But like, I can certainly imagine when what was the landmass called before all the continents broke away? When that was around, I'm sure it wouldn't have been very hard for the water and all that kind of stuff. But again, that's not, maybe there was a global flood. Okay, now we need to connect that to the actual stories in the Bible. Oh, the flood was magical. Gotcha. Okay.
An ancient riverbed on that side, going to an ancient riverbed on that side, and the Colorado River has cut through it.
Stay right here.
And by the way, if this great flood drained through the Grand Canyon, wouldn't there have been a Grand Canyon on every continent? How would we not have Grand Canyons everywhere if this water drained away in this extraordinary short amount of time, 4,000 years? Now, when you look at these layers carefully, you find these beautiful fossils. And when I say beautiful, I am inspired by them. They're remarkable because we are looking at the past. You find down low, you'll find what you might consider as rudimentary sea.
There we go. Kid with I can call you kid with He yeah, Pangea, that's what I was talking about.
Animals. Up above, you'll find the famous trilobites. Above that, you might find some clams, some oysters. And above that, you'll find some mammals. You never, ever find a higher animal mixed in with a lower one. You never find a lower one trying to swim its way to the higher one. If it all happened in such an extraordinary short amount of time, if this water drained away just like that, wouldn't we expect to see some turbulence? And by the way, anyone here, really, if you can find one example of that, one example of that anywhere in the world, scientists of the world challenge you. They would embrace you. You would be a hero. You would change the world if you could find one example of that anywhere.
And that is maybe one of the most important points of this whole thing. Whether it's this conversation or any conversation about proof of God, evidence of God, any of that kind of stuff. It's not like scientists are out here like, no, there's definitely no God. There's definitely no God. For sure. No. It's like, okay, show me the evidence. And as he just said, you would be a hero. You would end all conflict between believers and non-believers. But of course, nobody's been able to do that. You guys are talking to yourselves. Cool.
People have looked and looked and looked. They have not found a single one. Now, here's an interesting thing. These are fossil skulls that people have found all around the world. It's by no means representative of all the fossil skulls that have been found, but these are all over the place. Now, if you were to look at these, I can assure you not any of them is a gorilla, right? If, as Mr. Ham and his associates claim, there was just man and then everybody else, there were just humans and all other species, where would you put modern humans among these skulls? How did all these skulls get all over the earth in these extraordinary fashion? Where would you put us? Well, I can tell you we are on there, and I encourage you, when you go home, to look it up.
Try again. I'm with you if you got it.
Now, one of the extraordinary claims associated with Mr. Ham's worldview is that this giant boat, very large wooden ship, went aground safely on a mountain in the Middle East, what we now call the Middle East. And so places like Australia are populated then by animals who somehow managed to get from the Middle East all the way to Australia in the last 4,000 years. Now, that to me is an extraordinary claim. We would expect then, somewhere between the Middle East and Australia, we would expect to find evidence of kangaroos. We would expect to find some fossils, some bones. In the last 4,000 years, somebody would have been hopping along there and died along the way, and we'd find them. And furthermore, there's a claim that there was a land bridge that allowed these animals to get from Asia all the way to the continent of Australia.
Was there though?
And that land bridge has disappeared in the last 4,000 years. No navigator, no diver, no U.S. Navy submarine. No one's ever detected any evidence of this, let alone any fossils of kangaroos. So your expectation is not met. It doesn't seem to hold up. So let's see, if there are 4,000 years since Ken Ham's flood, and let's say, as he said many times, there are 7,000 kinds.
I love how he calls it Ken Ham's flood. a flood. And she's like, a little dig that like, okay, this is your little thing that you're doing.
Today, the very, very lowest estimate is that there are about 8.7 million species, but a much more reasonable estimate is it's 50 million or even 100 million when you start counting the viruses and the bacteria and all the beetles that must be extant in the tropical rainforest.
And the droplets!
So we'll take a number which I think is pretty reasonable, 16 million species today, okay? If these came from 7,000 kinds, that's, let's say we have 7,000 subtracted.
So this is a really interesting way to attack Ken Ham's argument. He's breaking down the, because Ken Ham put that out that the flood was 4,000 years ago, and that there are 7,000 different kinds of animals that were on the ark. So now we have 16 million species today. So using those figures.
From 15 million, that's 15,993. We have 4,000 years. We have 365 and a quarter days a year. We would expect to find 11 new species every day. So
11 new species every day. If there's 4,000 years since the flood, and there's 7,000 different kinds, and we end up with 16 million different species today, that means we would have to find 11 new undiscovered species every single day. Every single day.
You'd go out into your yard, you wouldn't just find a different bird, a new bird. You'd find a different kind of bird, a whole new species of bird every day, a new species of fish, a new species of organisms you can't see, and so on. I mean, this would be enormous news. The last 4,000 years, people would have seen these changes among us. So the Cincinnati Enquirer, I imagine, would carry a column right next to the weather report. Today's new species, and it would list these 11 every day.
Every day, yeah. Every day.
We see no evidence of that. There's no evidence of these species. There just simply isn't enough time.
Which begs the question, okay, if this is the case, if we do in fact have 16 million different species today, then Ken Ham now has to justify how is it that we started with 7,000, we ended up with 16 million, but we didn't get 11 new species every day. Did we just have one day where we got a million species once a year, or like how does that work? That's mathematics.
Now, as you may know, I was graduated from engineering school, and I got a job at Boeing. I worked on 747s. Okay, everybody relax.
I love this. Anyone will say, here's a secret that the white Christians don't want you to know. There was an Asian Noah, an Australian Noah, there was an Indian Noah, and there was a North American Noah, and they all had their own arcs. Now it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Indie Film, you figured it out. You figured it out.
I was very well supervised. Everything's fine. There's a tube in the 747 I kind of think of as my tube, but that aside, I traveled the highways of Washington State quite a bit. I was a young guy. I had a motorcycle. I used to go mountain climbing in Washington State, Oregon. And you can drive along and find these enormous...
No Freedom says, I don't trust the math 100%, just like how scientists sometimes knew how much God was on the planet. Okay, let's break that down. You don't trust the math. Do you disagree with the equation that we have 4,000 years, starting with 7,000 animals, different kinds of animals, and ending up with 16 million? You disagree that there would have to be 11 new species every day? I mean, I haven't sat down and broken down the math, but I'm going to trust that, unless there's someone in the comments here saying, oh, that's not how it was, then he probably did some basic math before putting that up there. Now, the second part, I don't trust the math. Just like how scientists somehow knew how much God was on the planet, I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that means.
Boulders on top of the ground. Enormous rocks. Huge, sitting on top of the ground. Now, out there in regular academic pursuits, regular geology, people have discovered that there used to be a lake in what is now Montana, which we charmingly refer to as Lake Missoula, is not there now, but the evidence for it, of course, is, if I may, overwhelming. And so an ice dam would form at Lake Missoula, and once in a while it would break. It would build up and break. And there were multiple floods in my old state of Washington State. And but just before we go on, let me just say, go Seahawks. That was very gratifying. Very gratifying for me. Anyway, you drive along the road, and
I'm very excited to see how these numbers change as we continue. But apparently, Nye is up to 15. And where did Ken Ham leave off? Let's see real quick. I'm losing it. I can't find it. I think he said he was at 3 to 15, something like that. I can't find it, but
there are these rocks. So if, as is asserted here at this facility, that the heavier rocks would sink to the bottom during a flood event, the big rocks, and especially their shape, instead of aerodynamic, the hydrodynamic, the water changing shape.
So whether or not this has to do with gravity, if you don't believe in gravity and you believe in mass, or that mass is the only thing that matters, then this would still hold true.
As water flows past, you'd expect them to sink to the bottom. But here are these enormous rocks right on the surface, and there's no shortage of them. If you go driving in Washington State or Oregon, they're readily available. So how could those be there if the Earth is just 4,000 years old? How could they be there if this one flood caused that? Another remarkable thing I'd like everybody to consider, inherent in this worldview, is that somehow Noah and his family were able to build a wooden ship that would house.
Oh, I love this. So before we get into this, where do we leave off? So what is the movie with the family that gets 2 kids die and the dad dies and the crash and goes? I don't know. That sounds like a lot. Elaborate. No. So, this is a chart that has made a, what the fuck is the word that I'm looking for? Scaled, has made a scale for what Noah's Ark would have to look like if it were real. Anyway, this is a scale of how the ship was built. I'm gonna actually back this
Noah
up.
And his family were able to build a wooden ship that would house 14,000 individuals. There are 7,000 kinds, and then there's a boy and a girl for each one of those. So it's about 14,000, 8 people.
Again, this is pure arithmetic.
And these people were unskilled. As far as anybody knows, they had never built a wooden ship before. Furthermore, they had to get all these animals on there, and they had to feed them. And I understand that Mr. Ham has some explanations for that, which I frankly find extraordinary. But
oh, I cannot wait to hear that.
This is the premise of the bit. And we can then run a test, a scientific test. People in the early 1900s built an extraordinary large wooden ship, the Wyoming. It was a 6-masted schooner, the largest one ever built.
Schooner?
It had a motor on it for winching cable.
Schooner? I barely even know her.
And stuff. But this boat had a great difficulty. It was not as big as the Titanic, but it was a very long ship. It would twist in the sea. It would twist this way, and this way. And in all that twisting, it leaked. It leaked like crazy. The crew could not keep the ship dry. And indeed, it eventually foundered and sank, loss of all 14 hands.
Does anybody not get where that makes sense? Or do you disagree with that notion? That, okay, we have a ship here that's built that has to be a certain size based on 14,000 occupants. These are unskilled people who have never built a boat like that before. Now we have a modern, or at least contemporary, example of somebody trying to build a smaller wooden boat of sorts. And it did not work. Even though these were, exactly, that's who we're looking at. Again, ideas, not people. The fact that these experts were not able to make this this ark shows that, okay, either it doesn't make sense that Noah and his crew would be able to do it, or there was some type of divine intervention. Okay, I'm willing to accept that that is a claim. Prove it. Prove it. I don't know what that means. Well, actually, if we can push more, well, say, I appreciate you guys. I just want to say I appreciate you guys because I'm getting to the point where not every you guys are having conversations with each other, and it's actually really tough to try to pay attention, know what I'm going to say, and determine in each comment whether it's for to put up for the show, if you guys are just talking to each other. But I'm so happy. I'm so happy that we're growing, we're moving, we're doing this. This community is happening. So if your comment doesn't come up, it's not anything personal. It's just I'm assuming you guys are talking to each other, like this comment here. And if you say something that you wanted me to put up and I miss it, just put like a Q or for question or whatever. I'm doing my best. And we're still going, it's not too hard, but as we get up there, more people are spilling in. I just had a short today that had over 3,000 views, so we're getting more people. So yeah, just thank you guys so much, and please don't be offended if I don't hit your comment. What do we got here? Boom. I can make. That's a good one. That is a good one. Only one way to twist. The other way is demonstrate recalling bending. Okay. Well, what's the difference between bending and twisting? That's a question I want answered, sir. So all these people.
So there were 14
building this ark
aboard a ship built by very, very skilled shipwrights in New England. These guys were the best in the world at wooden shipbuilding, and they couldn't build a boat as big as the Ark is claimed to have been.
So again, if we look here, this, that. So the Wyoming is what he's talking about. This one here, that was 400 feet. This would have to have been over 500 feet. Skilled shipwrights could not keep the Wyoming afloat. But Noah apparently did.
Is that reasonable? Is that possible? That
so is it? What's the? I actually want to dig into this because somebody was saying this. Ham is, or Bill Nye is getting more douche count for stickers on his laptop. Is it that he's got multiple stickers? Is it that he's not covering the Apple sign? Or is it the sticker, just the fact that you put stickers? Because I know a lot of people put the sticker over the logo, like the Apple or whatever kind of computer you have. You put it over the logo. I have a sticker on my laptop, but that's just because I don't want to. If I'm ever in a, when I do actually get a real camera and you can see my laptop in the frame, I don't want the brand name coming up unless they want to pay me. I'm very interested in that. It's kind of cringe. It's kind of cringe. It's 2020. Well, no, this is 2017. This happened in 2017. So we got to go by 2017 standards. Yeah, I'm with both those though. One sticker's go.
The best shipbuilders in the world couldn't do what 8 unskilled people, men and their wives, were able to do.
Well, that's because they had the power of God.
If you visit the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., it's 163 acres, and they have 400 species. By the way, this picture that you're seeing was taken by spacecraft in space, orbiting the Earth.
But it's fake.
If you told my grandfather, let alone my father, that we had that capability, they would have been amazed. That capability comes from our fundamental understanding of...
What if it's a sticker of this? I just have this sticker covering the logo on my laptop. And this is not for children, nor is what is in the mug. Over the logo is actually okay. In some cases necessary. All right, fair enough. Because I only got the one, and I do agree that the two factors: A, that there's multiple stickers, and B, that it's not even covering the logo. That is, I'll give you points there. I'll give him points there.
Gravity, of material science, of physics, and life science, where you go looking. This place is
I'm gonna
often
back
as
that up. I missed the beginning of the sentence. Stop, because I hate my life. Struggle streaming.
that capability comes from our fundamental understanding of gravity, of material science, of physics, and life science, where you go looking. This place is often, as any zoo, is often deeply concerned.
Hey, we got Dial the Dane. Sorry if I got that incorrect. Welcome. Said, hey, just came in here. What is Bill arguing? Sorry, or can I ask, what's the debate about? The argument for God? Yes. So we have Bill Nye, who very well known, and then he is debating Ken Ham, who is a young Earth creationist, believes that the Earth is 6,000 years old, and that Noah's Ark, the story of Noah's Ark is a legit, real thing that happened 4,000 years ago, and I want to have lots more conversations about religion, and I know a lot of people who are religious are not young Earth creationists, but I figured this was a good starting point. So you have come just at the right time. Welcome. I am glad you are here.
And criticized for how it treats its animals. They have 400 species on 163 acres, 66 hectares. Is it reasonable that Noah and his colleagues, his family, were able to maintain 14,000 animals and themselves and feed them aboard a ship that was bigger than anyone's ever been able to build?
Nope.
Now, here's the thing. What we want in science as practiced out on the outside, is an ability to predict. We want to have a natural law that is so obvious and clear, so well understood, that we can make predictions about what will happen. We can predict that we can put a spacecraft in orbit and take a picture of Washington, D.C. We can predict that if we provide this much room for an elephant, it will live healthily for a certain amount of time. So,
yeah, Dylan, I'm going to call you Dane, unless you have a better, if you want to correct me. But Dane says, oh, a young Earth creationist. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it seems like I came in at an interesting time. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the warm welcome. I appreciate you being here. Word up. Dane is in the game. Welcome, brother. Welcome. You are now part of the IndianJesus family.
So I'll give you an example. In the explanation provided by traditional science of how we came to be, we find, as Mr. Ham alluded to many times in his recent remarks, we find a sequence of animals in what generally is called the fossil record. This would be to say, when we look at the layers that you find in Kentucky, you look at them carefully, you find a sequence of animals.
This red thing here says 4 foot evolved here.
So a succession. And as one might expect, when you're looking at old records, there's some pieces seem to be missing, a gap. So scientists got to thinking about this. There are lungfish that jump from pond to pond in Florida and end up in people's swimming pools. And they're amphibians, frogs and toads, croaking and carrying on. And so people wondered if there wasn't
Well, no freedoms. Now you're part of this family. And I promise you that, well, I don't know about anybody else, but as best as I can, I'm going to make sure that nobody who is interested in doing that type of bullshit comes around. But you are part of this family now, and you are more than welcome. And I promise you, I will never try to kill you. Come on.
a fossil or an organism, an animal that had lived, that had characteristics of both. People over the years had found that in Canada, there was clearly a fossil marsh, a place that used to be a swamp, had dried out. And they found all kinds of happy swamp fossils there, ferns, so on, and organisms, animals, fish that were recognized. And people realized that if this, with the age of the rocks there, as computed by traditional scientists, with the age of the rocks there, this would be a reasonable place to look for an animal, a fossil of an animal that lived there. And indeed, scientists found it.
Wow.
This fish lizard guy.
Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk that using science would get you results? It's crazy.
On several specimens. It wasn't one individual. In other words, they made a prediction that this animal would be found, and it was found. So far, Mr. Ham and his worldview, the Ken Ham creation model, does not have this capability. It cannot make predictions. And
that is a huge part of any type of science. Any type of science. The ability to predict is inherent to the process of science. If we can understand, again, going back to the most simple example, even though some of you don't believe in gravity, we all know, if I'm going to let go of this thing, we all know what's going to happen. Was anybody surprised that that just happened? Why is that? Because we understand the physics of what went on, and we can predict. I'm going to do it again. Anybody want to take a bet that it's not going to fall? $1,000. Anybody want to take a $1,000 bet? Send it to you from CashApp. What we got in the comments? Anybody willing to take that $1,000 bet? No? Why is that? Because we can predict the future based on understanding the laws of physics and the universe. Freedom says, I can predict Joe Biden won't remember he was president. But that's an important point. You know, the notion of making predictions.
Show results. Here's an extraordinary one that I find remarkable. There are certain fish.
What about the nitrogen in the air and not gravity? Let's do it. What about the nitrogen in the air made it fall?
The top minnows that have the remarkable ability to have sex with other fish, traditional fish sex, and they can have sex with...
They belong to the streets!
...themselves. Now, one of the old questions in life science, everybody, one of the old sort of chin strokers, is why does any organism, whether you're an ash tree, a sea jelly, a squid, a marmot, why does anybody have sex? I mean, there are more bacteria in your tummy right now than there are humans on Earth. And bacteria, they don't bother with that, man. They just like split themselves in half. They get new bacteria. Like, let's get her done. Let's go. But why does think of all the trouble a rose bush goes to make a flower, and the thorns and the bees swimming, flying around, interacting. Why does anybody bother with all that?
Guys, if I could get one more like, I would be eternally grateful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dane says, well, the odds of it not falling is 1 in trillions. Quantum physics could argue that if you do something enough times, the outcome will change. But the likelihood of it is so low. We usually say the pen is going to fall due to it being observable, and due to us knowing some of the process of gravity, i.e. what it is, what it does, etc. We have a vague idea when gravity changes and why it might change their circumstances. All about likelihood. Correct. Even though this is absolutely true, that theoretically I could let go and it would float out into whatever. Theoretically, that could happen. So again, I will ask, $1,000. $1,000. Does anybody want to take $1,000 bet that when I let go, it will go on these odds? So, exactly. So, Dane is absolutely right about the fact that it's when you get down to it, we can't know anything for certain. But there's a level of colloquial understanding that when we know things, when we can predict things, when we understand things, maybe it's not 100%. But the likelihood is so high that it is unrealistic to think that it would be anything else. Freedom says, can I make a bet that the speed at which it falls will change depending on the area? No, because the laws of physics would absolutely dictate that. What is that? That's exactly how gravity works. So, I mean, you could ask anybody, but I'm not taking that bet.
And the answer seems to be your enemies. And your enemies are not lions and tigers and bears.
Oh my.
Oh my. No. Your enemies are germs and parasites. That's what's going to get you. Germs and parasites. My first cousin's son died tragically from essentially the flu. This is not some story I heard about. It's my first cousin once removed.
He should have got his booster. Sorry, that was insensitive.
Because apparently The virus had the right genes to attack his genes. So when you have sex, you have a new set of genes. You have a new mixture.
Oh, Miguel doesn't understand evolution. Says, so a slimy half-fish lizard thing crawled from the water and turned into a man. No. That is as retarded as Ken Ham. That absolutely is retarded. To think that a species can change in its lifetime from the species that it is into another species. That is not what evolution is. That is not what is proposed. That is not ever what it's ever been. And that is why, well, if men came from monkeys, then why are still monkeys? Even though we came from apes, and monkeys and humans came from apes. That is why that is a dumb question. No. No slimy half-fish lizard thing crawled from the water and turned into a man. That's not how evolution works. I mean, I don't have the time to explain the entire thing to you, but I'm sure he will have similar questions. Ken Ham will have similar questions, and that Bill will address them.
So people studied these top minnows, and they found that the ones who reproduced sexually had fewer parasites than the ones that reproduced on their own. This black spot disease. Wait, there's more. In these populations, with flooding and so on, with river ponds get isolated and they dry up and the river flows again, in between, some of the fish will have sex with other fish sometimes, and they'll have sex on their own, what's called asexually. And those fish, the ones that are in between, sometimes this, sometimes that, they have an intermediate number.
There's a masturbation joke there, but I can't get to it.
Of infections. In other words, the explanation provided by evolution made a prediction. And the prediction's extraordinary and subtle, but there it is. How else would you explain it? And to Mr. Ham and his followers, I say this is something that we in science want. We want the ability to predict. And your assertion that there's some difference between the natural laws that I use to observe the world today and the natural laws that existed 4,000 years ago is extraordinary and unsettling.
Hey, we got Jimmy Dean, resident sausage, in the building. Welcome, buddy. Said the simulation can make up whatever backstory it wants, and we're forced to accept it. That's a conversation that this is building up to. We will definitely get there, but that ain't going to fly with where everybody's standing now. So we need to all get on the same page. That's why we're starting with young Earth creationism, and we're going to build from there. Glad to see you, buddy. Glad you are here.
Travel around. I have a great many family members in Danville, Virginia, one of the U.S.'s most livable cities. It's lovely. And I was driving along, and there was a sign in front of a church, Big Bang Theory, you got to be kidding me, God. Now, everybody, why would someone at the church, a pastor, for example, put that sign up? Unless he or she didn't believe that the Big Bang was a real thing.
Well, of course.
I just want to review briefly with everybody why we accept, in the outside world, why we accept the Big Bang.
All right. So anybody who doesn't accept the Big Bang and thinks that God just snapped his fingers and created the Garden of Eden, this is your time to pay attention. Miguel, this is your time.
Edwin Hubble. Oh, sorry. There you go. You got to be kidding me, God. Edwin Hubble was sitting at Mount Wilson, which is up from Pasadena, California. On a clear day, you can look down and see where the Rose Parade goes. It's that close to civilization. But even in the early 1900s, the people who selected this site for astronomy picked an excellent site. The clouds and smog are below you. And Edwin Hubble sat there at this very big telescope night after night studying the heavens. And he found that the stars are moving apart.
I want to, what does this mean? Yes, you have to pick one. No other choices available. No thanks. Pick one what? I don't understand what the question is. And sometimes, yes, there's only, this is accurate for many things in life. Specifically, how the universe was created. There is an answer. Now, we don't know how the universe was created, but that led to the Big Bang, which we do know did happen. And what he's explaining to you right now is talking about the Big Bang. I just said, if you don't believe in the Big Bang, pay attention. So let's back this up and make sure you're paying attention. Man.
Hundreds of people who selected this site for astronomy picked an excellent site. The clouds and smog are below you. And Edwin Hubble sat there at this very big telescope night after night studying the heavens. And he found that the stars are moving apart. The stars are moving apart.
The stars
and
are
he wasn't
moving
sure why,
apart.
but it was clear that the stars are moving farther and farther apart all the time. So people talked about it for a couple decades. And then eventually another astronomer, almost a couple decades, another astronomer, Fred Hoyle, just remarked, well, it was like there was a big bang. There was an explosion. This is to say, since everything's moving apart, it's very reasonable that at one time they were all together.
So just to really quickly, if you are going to refute what Bill Nye is saying, and I've already acknowledged that all he has is a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, I believe. So he's not some high-level theoretical physicist. But if you're going to refute what he's saying, then you must have some understanding of what he is referencing and why it is incorrect. If you're just saying, nah, that's not an argument.
And there's a place from whence these things expanded. And it was a remarkable insight. But people went still questioning it for decades. Science and conventional scientists questioning it for decades. These two researchers wanted to listen for radio signals from space, radio astronomy. And this is, while we have visible light for our eyes, there's a whole nother bunch of waves of light that are much longer. The microwaves in your oven are about that long. The radar at the airport is about that long.
And this is, again, not controversial. We know that there's a visible spectrum of light. We know there's infrared. We know there's ultraviolet. Neither can are visible to the human eye, but they absolutely do exist.
FM radio signals about like this. AM radio signals are kilometer. There are several soccer fields. They went out listening, and there was this hiss, this tss, all the time that wouldn't go away. And they thought, oh, doggone it, there's some loose connector. They plugged in the connector. They re-screwed it. They made it tight. They turned it this way. The hiss was still there. They heard it that way. This is still there. They thought it was pigeon droppings that had affected the reception of this horn, it's called. This thing is still there. It's in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. It's a National Historic Site.
Hey, NJ all day. Let's go.
And Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson had found this cosmic background sound that was predicted by astronomers.
EMBR.
Astronomers running the numbers, doing math, predicted that in the cosmos would...
What did he say? Predicted. Predicted. Remember how important that is to a scientific theory, whether or not it can predict the future with any, taking into account the likelihood thing that we were talking about.
Be left over this echo, this energy from the Big Bang that would be detectable. And they detected it. We built the Cosmic Observatory for Background Emissions, the COBE spacecraft, and it matched exactly the astronomers' predictions.
Whoa, what a weird coincidence.
You got to respect that. It's a wonderful thing. Now, along that line is some interest in the age of the Earth. Right now, it's generally agreed that the Big Bang happened 13.7 billion years ago. What we can do on Earth, these elements that we all know on the periodic table of chemicals, even ones we don't know, were created when stars explode. And I look like nobody, but I attended a lecture by Hans Bethe, who won a Nobel Prize for discovering the process by which stars create all these elements. The one that interests me especially is our good friends rubidium and strontium. Rubidium becomes strontium spontaneously. It's an interesting thing to me. A neutron becomes a proton, and it goes up the periodic table. When lava comes out of the ground, molten lava, and it freezes, turns to rock, when the melt solidifies or crystallizes, it locks the rubidium and strontium in place. And so by careful assay, by being diligent, you can tell when the rock froze. You can tell how old the rubidium and strontium are, and you can get an age for the Earth.
So again, I want to make sure that if you are denying the fact of the Big Bang, you must know all of what he's saying and be able to refute it. Because, it just doesn't make sense to me, is not an argument. As he said earlier, if you can debunk all of this, you will win a Nobel Prize. You will become the most famous person in the world. So whether you're religious or not. So there absolutely is incentive for people who are scientists to disprove what science already says, because that's how science has always worked. Jimmy, these kinds of debates are completely moot because fundamentally, Ken's arguments are based in belief and has no physical or replicable evidence. I agree with you, but these conversations need to be had in order to understand the next level of having this conversation. I wanted to do some stuff. I wanted to look at some Christopher Hitchens, maybe some Lawrence Krauss, and I even looked at Michael Shermer from Skeptic Magazine. But to be honest, it was just too highbrow. If you're not reading this stuff and you're operating on, so a slimy fish came out of the water and turned into a human, then you're not going to be able to get there. So we have to start at the bottom. We have to start at the beginning. That's how science worked. Well, yeah, Fauci begs to differ. He is the science. Well, that's where scientism comes in. Scientism and science are not the same thing. And everything about Dr. Fauci is anti-scientific. It's dogmatic. There's no two ways about that.
When that stuff falls on fossils, you can get a very good idea of how old the fossils are. I encourage you all to go to Nebraska, go to Ashfall State Park, and see the astonishing fossils. It looks like a Hollywood movie. There are rhinoceroses, there are three-toed horses.
Rhinoceroses or rhinoceri?
In Nebraska. None of those animals are extant today. And they were buried catastrophically by a volcano in what is now Idaho. It's now Yellowstone National Park. What's called the hot spot. People call it the super volcano. And it's a remarkable thing. Apparently, as I can tell you, as a Northwesterner around for Mount St. Helens, I'm full disclosure, I'm on the Mount St. Helens board. When it goes off, it gives out a great deal of gas that's toxic and knock these animals out. Looking for relief, they go to a watering hole, and then when the ash comes, they were all buried. It's an extraordinary place. Now, if in the bad old days you had heart problems, they would right away cut you open. Now we use a drug based on rubidium to look at the inside of your heart without cutting you open. Now, my Kentucky friends, I want you to consider this. Right now, there is no place in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to get a degree in this kind of nuclear medicine, this kind of drugs associated with that. I hope you find that troubling.
Miguel, did I call you dumb? Did I call anybody dumb? All I said is that you don't understand. That's okay. There's a lot of things that I don't understand. But you know what I don't do? Pretend to understand them and get indignant about straw man claims. You got indignant about, oh, so is there a slimy fish just walking out of the water and turning into a human? No, Miguel. That is not what we're talking about. So instead of getting defensive, just learn. And then tomorrow, you'll be a smarter person than you are right now.
I hope you're concerned about that. You want scientifically literate students in your Commonwealth for a better tomorrow for everybody. You can't get this here. You have to go out of state. Now, as far as the distance to stars, understand this is very well understood. It's February. We look at a star in February, we measure an angle to it, we wait 6 months, we look at that same star again, and we measure that angle. It's the same way carpenters built this building. It's the same way surveyors surveyed the land that we're standing on. And so by measuring the distance to a star, you can figure out how far away it is, that star, and then the stars beyond it and stars beyond that. There are billions of stars, more than 6,000 light years from here. A light year is a unit of distance, not a unit of time. There are billions of stars. Mr. Ham, how could there...
Wait, we all knew that, right? That a light year is not a measurement of time, that it's a measurement of distance. We all knew that, right?
There be billions of stars, more distant than 6,000 years, if the world's only 6,000 years old. It's an extraordinary claim. There's another astronomer, Adolf Patel, who remarked first about the reasonable man. Is it reasonable that we have ice older by a factor of 100 than you claim the Earth is? We have trees that have more tree rings than the Earth is old. That we have rocks with rubidium and strontium and uranium and potassium argon dating that are far, far, far older than you claim the Earth is. Could anybody have built an ark that would sustain better than any ark anybody was able to build on the Earth?
No.
So if you're asking me, and I got the impression you were, is Ken Ham's creation model viable? I say no. Absolutely.
So I think they're going into open debate now. So this should be a little bit more interesting, where they're just going back and forth and actually having an open conversation. Any film says infinite number of stars, and I made a castle run in 12 parsecs. I have no idea what that means. I'm sure it's some type of pop cultural reference, and I don't get it.
Absolutely not. Now, one last thing. You may not know that in the U.S. Constitution, from the Founding Fathers, is the sentence to promote the progress of science and useful arts.
We're getting into it
Kentucky
now.
Voters who might be watching online in places like Texas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Kansas. Please, you don't want to raise a generation of science students who don't understand how we know our place in the cosmos. Our place in space. We need to innovate to keep the United States where it is in the world. Thank you very much.
Again, I think they're going into open debate, open discussion. And as Jimmy Dean says, let the blood sports begin.
That's a lot to take in. I hope everybody's holding up well. That's a lot of information. What we're going to have now is a 5-minute rebuttal time for each gentleman to address the other one's comments. And then there will be a 5-minute counter rebuttal after that.
Okay, so it's not going to be, you heard what he said, but 5 minutes instead of these long ass.
Things are going to start moving a little more quickly now. So at this point in particular, I want to make sure we don't have applauding or anything else going on that slows it down. So, Mr. Ham, if you'd like to begin.
He said, shut the F up so we could get on with what we getting on with.
Your 5-minute rebuttal first.
Go and get him. Go and get him, bro.
Well, first of all, Bill, if I was to answer all the points that you...
Okay, indie film, this is where I really need you. I need you to keep track of the douche points, because I have a feeling is... Maybe. But this is when the douche points are really going to come into effect. I think we might see a switch.
Brought up, the moderator would think I was going on for millions of years. So I can only deal with some of them. And you mentioned the age of the Earth a couple of times, so let me deal
2017.
with that. As I said in my presentation, you can't observe the age of the Earth, and I would say that comes under what we call historical origin science. Now, just to understand, first, you understand where I'm coming from. Yes, we admit we build our origins of historical science on the Bible. The Bible says God created in 6 days. The Hebrew word yom, as it's used in Genesis 1 with evening, morning number, means an ordinary day. Adam was made on day 6. And so when you add up all those genealogies specifically given in the Bible, from Adam to Abraham, you've got 2,000 years from Abraham to Christ, 2,000 years from Christ.
So this is his timeline here. This is his timeline. The world history timeline. And that this was what? This was 930 years ago? I don't know why it says Jesus in 2000 as well as today, but...
Christ to the present 2,000 years. That's how we get 6,000 years. So that's where it comes from, just so you know. Now, a lot of people say, now, by the way...
Oh, out of your asshole.
The Earth's age is 4.5 billion years old. And we have radioactive decay dating methods that found that. You see, we certainly observe radioactive decay, whether it's rubidium, strontium, whether it's uranium, lead, potassium, argon. But when you're talking about the past, we have a problem. I'll give you a practical example. In Australia, there were engineers that were trying to search out about a coal mine, and so they drilled down and they found a basalt layer, lava flow that had woody material in it, branches and twigs and so on. And when Dr. Andrew Snelling, our PhD geologist, sent that to a lab in Massachusetts in 1994, they used potassium argon dating. It dated to 45 million years old. Well, he also sent the wood to the radiocarbon section of the same lab, and that dated to 45,000 years old. 45,000-year-old wood and 45 million-year-old rock. The point is, there's a problem. Let me give you another example.
Is there, though?
Problem. There was a
because rock and wood don't behave the same way, but I'm not smart enough to know.
Lava dome that started to form in the 80s after Mount St. Helens erupted. And in 1994, Dr. Steve Austin, another PhD geologist, actually sampled the rock there. He took whole rock, crushed it, sent it to the same lab, actually, I believe, and got a date of 0.35 million years. When he separated out the minerals, amphibola and pyroxene, and used potassium argon dating, you get 0.9 million, 2.8 million. My point is, all these dating methods actually give all sorts of different dates. In fact, different dating methods on the same rock we can show give all sorts of different dates. See, there's lots of assumptions in regard to radioactive dating. Number one, for instance, the amounts of the parent and daughter isotopes at the beginning when the rock formed. You have to know them, but you weren't there. See, that's historical science. Assumption two, that all daughter atoms...
You have to know them, but you weren't there. That's historical science. Again, we're getting his claim about historical science. I don't know why maybe because it's so structured, and Bill Nye had, whatever he had to say first. But I don't know why he's not addressing this historical science notion. I don't know. Hopefully he gets there. And hopefully this video will play.
Today must have only been derived in situ radioactive decay of parent atoms. In other words, it's a closed system, but you don't know that, and there's a lot of evidence that that's not so. Assumption number 3, that the decay rates have remained a constant. And they're just some of them. There's others as well. The point is there's lots of assumptions in regard to the dating method. So there's no dating method you can use that you can absolutely age date a rock. There's all sorts of differences out there. And I do want to address the bit you brought up about Christians believing millions of years. Yeah, there's a lot of Christians out there that believe in millions of years, but I'd say they have a problem. I'm not saying they're not Christians, but because salvation is conditioned upon faith in Christ, not the age of the earth. But there's an inconsistency with what the Bible teaches. If you believe in millions of years, you've got death and bloodshed, suffering, disease over millions of years leading to man, because that's what you see in the fossil record. The Bible makes it very clear death is a result of man's sin. In fact, the first death was in the garden when God killed an animal, clothed Adam and Eve, first blood sacrifice, pointing towards what would happen with Jesus Christ, who would be the one who would be die once and for all. Now, if you believe in millions of years as a Christian, in the fossil record, there's evidence of animals eating each other. The Bible says originally all the animals and man were vegetarian. We weren't told we could eat meat until after the flood. There's diseases represented in the fossil record, like brain tumors, but the Bible says when God made everything, it was very good. God doesn't call brain tumors very good. There's fossilized thorns in the fossil record, said to be hundreds of millions of years old. The Bible says thorns came after the curse. So these two things can't be true at the same time. And you know what? There's hundreds of dating.
Stick with me, brother. Stick with me.
Methods out there, hundreds of them. Actually, 90% of them contradict billions of years. And the point is, all such dating methods are fallible. And I claim there's only one infallible dating method. It's a witness who was there, who knows everything, who told us. And that's from the Word of God. And that's why I would say that the Earth is only 6,000 years. And as Dr. Faulkner said, there's nothing in astronomy, and certainly Dr. Snelling would say there's nothing in geology to contradict a belief in a young age for the Earth and the universe.
Except all of the things that Bill Nye just talked about.
Mr. Nye, your 5-minute rebuttal, please.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the beginning. If you find 45-million-year-old rock on top of 45,000-year-old trees, maybe the rock slid on top.
Boom! Boom! Called it!
Maybe that's it. That seems much more reasonable explanation than it's impossible. As far as dating goes, the methods are very reliable. One of the mysteries or interesting things that people in my business, especially at the Planetary Society, are interested in is why all the asteroids seem to be so close to the same date. It's in an age, 4.5, 4.6 billion years. It's a remarkable thing. People at first expected a little more of a spread. So I understand that you take the Bible as written in English, translated not countless, but many, many times over the last 3 millennia, as to be a more accurate, more reasonable assessment of the natural laws we see around us than what I and everybody in here can observe. That to me is unsettling, troubling. And then about the disease thing, are the fish sinners? Have they done something wrong to get diseases? That's sort of an extraordinary claim that takes me just a little past what I'm comfortable with. And then as far as you can't observe the past, I have to stop you right there. That's what we do in astronomy. All we can do in astronomy is look at the past.
Why is that? Why is that he's making this claim? All we do in astronomy is look at the past. The reason that is exactly what it is has to do, again, with the laws of physics. If you look at a star, what you see is the past. The light that you are seeing from that star has taken however much time to reach your eyes. So by the time it reaches your eyes, you are looking at something that has already happened. There are stars that you can look at in the sky that do not exist any longer. Yep. There are stars that you can look at with your own eyes that no longer exist. So precisely what astronomy is looking at the past.
By the way, you're looking at the past right now because the speed of light bounces off of me and then gets to your eyes. And I'm delighted to see that the people in the back of the room appear just that much younger than the people in the front. So this idea that you can separate the natural laws of the past from the natural laws that we have now, I think is at the heart of our disagreement. I don't I don't see how we're ever going to agree with that if you insist that natural laws have changed. It's, for lack of a better word, it's magical. And I have appreciated magic since I was a kid, but it's not really what we want in conventional mainstream science. So your assertion that all the animals were vegetarians before they got on the ark, that's really remarkable. I have...
What? Has anybody else ever heard that? All animals were vegetarians before they got on the ark?
Not spent a lot of time with lions, but I can tell they've got teeth that really aren't set up for broccoli. That these animals were vegetarians till this flood is something that I would ask you to provide a little more proof for. I give you the lion's teeth. You give me verses as translated into English over 30 centuries. So that is not enough evidence for me. If you've ever played telephone, I remember very well in kindergarten, where you have a secret and you whisper it to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. Things often go wrong. So it's very reasonable to me that instead of lions being vegetarians on the ark, lions are lions. And the...
Guys, do me a favor. This stream is struggling on views. And I know, that this isn't going to be the most exciting stuff that we do. But do me a favor. Whatever your favorite social media is, just take the link, post it there. Let's get some more people in here and really get this shit popping.
Information that you use to create your worldview is not consistent with what I as a reasonable man would expect. So I want everybody to consider the implications of this. If we accept Mr. Ham's point of view that Mr. Ham's point of view that the Bible is translated into American English serves as a science text, and that
that's the claim. That's the claim. That the Bible is a scientific textbook.
His followers will interpret that for you. I want you to consider what that means. It means that Mr. Ham's word, or his interpretation of these other words, is somehow to be more respected than what you can observe in nature, what you can find literally in your backyard in Kentucky. It's a troubling and unsettling point of view, and it's one I very much like you to address when you come back. As far as the 5 races that you mentioned, it's kind of the same thing. The 5 races were claimed by people who were of European descent, and they said, hey, we're the best, check us out. And that turns out to be, if you've ever traveled anywhere or done anything, not to be that way. People are much more alike than they are different. So are we supposed to take your word for English words translated over the last 30 centuries instead of what we can observe in the universe around us?
Very good. Mr. Ham,
boom.
To offer your 5 minutes.
That is quite a question. That is quite a question. Let's see how he responds.
Counter rebuttal.
This and Indie Film, this might be where I'm thinking of, because again, I haven't seen this since it originally aired, but douche points may be changing.
First of all, Bill, just so I just don't want a misunderstanding here, and that is the 45,000-year-old wood, or supposedly 45,000, was inside the basalt. So it was encased in the basalt, and that's why I was making that particular point.
That doesn't change what he said.
And I would also say that natural law hasn't changed. As I talk about, I said we have the laws of logic, the uniformity of nature, and that only makes sense within a biblical worldview anyway.
Okay, so if the laws of nature have not changed, then you need to contend with the mathematical equation that he brought originally, with the number of species, with how old trees are. If the natural law, if the laws of physics have not changed, and according to the laws of physics, these things can only happen over a certain amount of time, and there hasn't been that much time, but we still see those results, then it means that the laws of physics were not in place. The natural laws at some point changed. Because if they didn't change, then your argument is bunk.
Of a creator God who set up those laws, and that's why we can do good experimental science, because we assume those laws are true, and they'll be true tomorrow. I do want to say this, that you said a few times, Ken Ham's view or Ken Ham's model. It's not just Ken Ham's model. We have a number of PhD scientists on our own staff. I had video quotes from some scientist.
Just a quick thing to, maybe get us all on the same page. Every single doctor giving puberty blockers to kids has a PhD. Every single one of them. So again, when it comes to the question of God, then just because you have a PhD, just because you do some sort of science, does not mean that you are an expert on philosophy and theology.
It's Dr. Demadian's model. It's Dr. Fabish's model. It's Dr. Faulkner's model. It's Dr. Snelling's model. It's Dr. Purdham's model, and so it goes on.
Okay, so then they're the ones who are wrong.
And you go on our website, and there are lots of creation scientists who agree with exactly what we're saying concerning the Bible and concerning the Bible's
also
account
wrong
of creation. So it's not just my model in that sense. There's so much that I could say, but as I listen to you, I believe you're confusing terms in regard to species and kinds, because we're not saying God created all those species. We're saying God created kinds. And we're not saying species got on the ark. We're saying kinds. In fact, we've had researchers working on what is a kind. For instance, there's a number of papers published on our website where, for instance, they look at dogs and they say, well, this one breeds with this one, with this one, with this one, this one, this one. And you can look at all the papers around the world and you can connect them all together and say that obviously represents one kind. In fact, as they've been doing that research, they have predicted probably less than actually 1,000 kinds were on Noah's Ark. Which means just over 2,000 animals, and the average size of a land animal is not that big. So, there was plenty of room on the ark. I also believe that a lot of what you were saying was really illustrating my point. You were talking about tree rings and ice layers, and just talking about kangaroos getting to Australia and all sorts of things like that. But see, we're talking about the past when we weren't there. We didn't see those tree rings actually forming. We didn't see those layers being laid down. In 1942, for instance, there were
right, but we understand through natural law how that happened. So if that's not how that happened, then you are making the claim that natural law changed. That is exactly what Bill Nye's point was originally. Janine says, my model of flat earth must be right. Look at all the other people I can point to that believe in it. Yup.
Some planes that were landed on the ice in Greenland, and they found them, 46 years later, I think it was, 3 miles away from the original location with 250 feet of ice buried on top of them. So ice can build up catastrophically. If you assume 1 layer a year or something like that, it's like the dating methods. You're assuming things.
Oh, and I know he's going to get into this, but it's not about, when it comes to the snow ice thing that he talked about, we're not talking about assumptions. We're talking about measurements. We're talking about, you can see in the layers of the ice, just like the layers of rock, that they are changed. They are different. But this happened, and then there was a summer season that led to this layer, and then another winter season that led to this layer. You can see it. And so if it is not, in fact, because of those winter, summer seasons that's creating that ice, then Ken Ham is claiming that there is another force that is doing that. And if there is another force that is doing that, then natural law does not apply to that. But yet he's saying, no, I never said natural law changed. Division Plus says, you didn't see Jesus Christ or God and still believe in them. Boom. The only thing that can explain these layers, the earth is actually a giant onion. Cakes have layers.
In regard to the past that aren't necessarily true. In regard to lions and teeth, that most bears have teeth very much like a lion or tiger.
Do they though?
Vegetarian. The panda, if you look at its teeth, you'd say maybe it should be a savage carnivore. It eats mainly bamboo.
If this wasn't so long, I would literally pull up pictures of panda teeth and lion teeth just to show that I haven't even looked this up before, but I guarantee you they're different.
A little fruit bat in Australia has really sharp teeth, looks like a savage little creature, and it rips into fruit. So just because an animal has sharp teeth doesn't mean it's a meat eater, it means it has sharp teeth. And so again, it really comes down to our interpretation of these things. I think too, in regard to the Missoula example that you gave, creationists do believe there's been post-flood catastrophism. Noah's flood certainly was a catastrophic event, but then there's been post-flood catastrophism since that time as well. And again, in regard to historical science, why would you say Noah was unskilled? I mean, I didn't meet Noah.
Why would you say Noah was unskilled? Isn't the story that he was just some guy and God came down and said, hey, this is about to happen, build an ark? That's the story. It wasn't, well, God came down to the best boat builder in all the world. No, it had to do with the fact that people were sinning all over the place, and Noah and his family were not sinning. And so that's why he was chosen. Am I incorrect about that? It's been a long time since I really took the story of Noah's Ark seriously. But it had nothing to do with his boat building skills. That's why you would assume that he's unskilled.
And neither did you.
And unskilled doesn't mean not skilled. It just means not particularly skilled, not an expert, not somebody who's done this before.
And, you know, really, it's an evolutionary view of origins, I believe, because you're thinking in terms people before us aren't as good as us. Hey, they're a civilization.
Again, no, that's a straw man. That is not, as I just explained, it's about having done it before. Not that people earlier than us are not as good as us, but particularly in the example that Bill Nye used, it was 14 people who were very experienced. People who did have expertise. And anyone says, yes, but I believe that God also gave him... Shut the fuck up.
Civilizations that existed in the past, and we look at their technology, and we can't even understand today how they did some of the things that they did. Who says Noah couldn't build a big boat? By the way, the Chinese and the Egyptians built.
The people who built the Wyoming, that's those experts. That's who said Noah couldn't build a boat.
Boats. In fact, some of our research indicates that some of the wooden boats that were built had 3 layers interlocking so they wouldn't twist like that and leak, which is why here at the Creation Museum...
If it wouldn't twist, it would break, you fucking moron! If the wood didn't twist on the ocean, it would just fucking break. That's why, like, think to the World Trade Center. The way that was built, they built in the wind stuff so that the building could have a little bit of wiggle room. Because if it didn't, then it wouldn't work. I'm not even like, whatever. Obviously, you don't understand what you're talking about, Ken.
And we have an exhibit on the ARK where we've rebuilt 1% of the ARK to scale and show 3 interlocking layers like that. And one last thing concerning the speed of light, and that is, I'm sure you're aware of the horizon problem. And that is from a Big Bang perspective, even the secularists have a problem of getting light and radiation out to the universe to be able to exchange with the rest of the universe to get that even microwave background radiation. On their model, 15.
Which part? If you have a boat and you're building a boat to go on water and it has no room I understand they're not supposed to, but that's what they're not built out of wood anymore. Giant boats are not made out of wood anymore. I mean, maybe I am wrong about the fact that, like, old pirate ships were built to have a sway in it, so that when the forces, the waves, that there was some wiggle room. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's what I understand. Certainly that's true about the World Trade Center, but even old wooden boats weren't supposed to flex. Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that. Still doesn't mean that God came down and made some random dude an amazing boat builder and got all of the only 7,000 kinds of animals, meaning 14,000 animals on the same boat in the same climate without eating each other.
Billion years or so.
Hey, we got Cherie in the building. Bah, 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 bah. Welcome. Yes, Bill Nye. Seems like you and me are the only ones. Everybody's here hating on Bill. I don't know how. I don't know why. But yeah, we are talking. If you're not familiar with Ken Ham, he is a young Earth creationist who believes the Earth is 6,000 years old, and he has he's the owner of the ARK Encounter, where he has a whole exhibit, a whole museum dedicated to the story of the Ark. Okay, so at least I'm right about that part. So yeah, okay. I take the L. The L has been taken. Oh, we're getting there. Trust me. There's a reason I asked you. So current douche levels, Ham is at a 3. As wrong as he is, he's only at a 3. Bill Nye, as correct as he is at a level 19 points. We're not going to say level. 19 points of douchebaggery. All right. Fair enough.
they can only get it about halfway, and that's why they have inflation theories, which means everyone has a problem concerning the light issue. There's things people don't understand, and we have some models on our website by some of our scientists to help explain those sorts of things.
Mr. Nye, your counter rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Ham, but I'm completely unsatisfied.
Me too.
View address just fundamental questions. 680,000 years of snow ice layers, which require winter-summer cycle. Let's say you have 2,000 kinds instead of 7. That makes the problem even more extraordinary. Multiplying 11 by by 3.5, we get to 35, 40 species every day that we don't see. They're not extinct. In fact, you probably know we're losing species.
So for those of you just joining, we did some arithmetic, or Bill did some arithmetic before. And Ken Ham believes that the flood happened 4,000 years ago, and that not every single species had to get on the ark, but only 7,000 different kinds of animals that then could, after they were on the ark, could develop into more species. So that's 14,000 animals and 4,000 years ago. And now we have 16 million species that we know about. And so that would, if you do the math, that means that we, every single day, if what Ken Ham is saying is true, it would mean that, sorry, I lost my thought because this asshole. We would have to get 11 new species every single day. And now he's changing it, but it makes it even worse. Because now we need even more. I forget what he just said. So saying, I meant take the L about it still doesn't mean God created the universe. Oh, you meant him take the L. Well, I don't mind taking L's. I took an L on the wood shit, and Ken Ham's taking a big L on this one. But I want to back this up a little bit.
What's kinds of snow ice layers which require winter-summer cycle? Let's say you have 2,000 kinds instead of 7. That makes the problem even.
So he's saying, let's say instead of there being 14,000 animals from 7,000 kinds, let's say bring it down to 2,000 kinds. So there's only 4,000 animals as opposed to 7,000.
More extraordinary. Multiplying 11 by by 3.5, we get to 35, 40 species every day that we don't see. They're not extinct. In fact, you probably know we're losing species.
All right. All right. One of you is wrong. Division Plus says modern large mass boats do bend, but there's a limit to its relative mass. And Jimmy says even old wooden boats weren't supposed to flex. One of you is wrong. Figure it out.
Due to mostly human activity and the loss of habitat. Then, as far as Noah being an extraordinary shipwright.
Well, no, you're the one making a claim here too, though. I agree with you, but if you're making the claim, I'm saying I don't know. If you're making the claim, you do the research.
I'm very skeptical. The shipwrights, my ancestors, the Nye family in New England.
We're gonna back this up just a second because
that we don't see. They're not extant.
Yeah. So based on if we're take it down from 14,000 animals on the ark to 4,000 animals on the ark, then in order to get to the 16 million today, that there'd be 35 to 40 new species that we would encounter every single day. Maybe I missed this. Maybe I missed the memo every single day of my life that 35 to 40 new species were discovered that day. But I don't think I did. Hey, we got Alex Pickus in the building. Welcome, buddy. Welcome. We're talking about Bill Nye debating a young earth creationist Christian. And it's getting interesting. Glad to have you, buddy. Glad to see you here.
In fact, you probably know we're losing species due to mostly human activity and the loss of habitat. Then,
aside from Ken Ham, that's really all he's good for.
As far as Noah being an extraordinary shipwright, I'm very skeptical. The shipwrights, my ancestors, the Nye family in New England, spent their whole life learning to make ships. I mean, it's very reasonable, perhaps, to you that Noah had superpowers and was able to build this extraordinary craft with 7 family members, but
God did it!
Just not reasonable. Then, by the way, the fundamental thing we disagree on, Mr. Ham, is this nature of what you can prove to yourself. This is to say, when people make assumptions based on radiometric data, when they make assumptions about the
Indy, I'm mad at you for pointing out the stickers because now they're bothering me too.
expanding universe, when they make assumptions about the rate at which genes
Thank you for stopping by, Cherie. Everybody say goodbye to Cherie. I wish you could stay a little bit longer, but thank you for stopping by. You have a great night.
change in populations of bacteria in laboratory growth media, they're making assumptions based on previous experience. They're not coming out of whole cloth. So next time you have a chance to speak, I encourage you to explain to us why we should accept your word for it, that natural law changed just 4,000 years ago.
So we're getting back to the same question, that if we do this math, it doesn't make sense. So if what you're saying is true, the only conclusion is that at some point, natural law changed. That's the only conclusion. Because if natural law didn't change, then the evidence that we have directly points to a much longer timeline than 4,000 to 6,000 years. So let's see where he goes with that. So, I mean, I don't know how you could push back against that, but he keeps saying that the law hasn't changed.
Completely. And there's no record of it. You know, there are pyramids that are older than that. There are human populations that are far older than that, with traditions that go back farther than that. And it's just not reasonable to me that everything changed 4,000 years ago. By everything, I mean the species, the surface of the earth, the stars in the sky, and the relationship of all the other living things on earth to humans. It's just not reasonable to me that everything changed like that. And another thing I would very much appreciate you addressing, there are billions of people in the world who are deeply religious, and I respect that. People get tremendous community and comfort and nurture and support from their religious fellows in their communities, in their faiths, in their churches, and yet they don't accept your point of view. There are Christians who don't accept that the earth could somehow be this extraordinarily young age because of all the evidence around them.
This gets back to the whole idea that everybody who is a Christian has their own belief system. It may be rooted in the same thing, but you go to church on Sunday, you turn to the person to your left and ask them, what is it that they believe? What is God to them? You'll get an answer. It's not going to be the same answer that if somebody asked you. Then you turn to the person to your right. Ask them the same question. They're going to give you a different answer than what's in your head and what the person before them said. It's just not true that Christianity, Catholicism, whatever label you put on it, it's just not true that there's a common ideology among your people. It's just not true.
And so what is to become of them, in your view? And by the way, this thing started, as I understand it, Ken Ham's creation model is based on the Old Testament.
You call it Ken Ham's creation model again.
So when you bring in, I'm not a theologian, when you bring in the New Testament, isn't that a little out of the box? I'm looking for explanations of the creation of the world as we know it, based on what I'm going to call science. Not historical science, not observational science. Things that each of us can do, akin to what we do. We're trying to outguess the characters on murder mystery shows, on crime scene investigation especially. What is to become of all those people who don't see it your way? For us in the scientific community, I remind you that when we find an idea that's not tenable, it doesn't work.
What do we do with it? What do we do with it? One idea that's not tenable, it doesn't work. I just had an idea that wooden boats are supposed to bend. Turns out that may not be tenable. So what did I do with that idea? Just let it go. Let it go.
It doesn't fly, doesn't hold water, whatever idiom you'd like to embrace. We throw it away. we're delighted. That's why I say if you can find.
We got a lot. We got a bit more here. I don't want to break this up and drag it on too long. But if you want to see what Division Plus has shown, it is in the Discord server. Link is in the description, and we will be having the panel right after the show.
Find a fossil that has swum between the layers. Bring it on. You would change the world if you could show that somehow the microwave background radiation is not a result of the Big Bang. Come on, write your paper, tear it up. So your view that we're supposed to take your word for this book written centuries ago, translated into American English, is somehow more important than what I can see with my own eyes is an extraordinary claim. And
boom, going into the whole observation thing. Well, you didn't observe that. No, but I can observe this.
For those watching online especially, I want to remind you that we need scientists and especially engineers for the future. Engineers use science to solve problems and make things. We need these people so that the United States can continue to innovate and continue to be a world leader. We need innovation, and that needs science education. Thank you.
Maybe we should have listened a little bit more of that. As much as woke as Bill Nye may have become, maybe a few more people should have listened to him in 2017. And then maybe he wouldn't have gone down that road. I'm just talking shit.
Thank you both. Now we're going to get to the things moving a little bit faster, and I think they may be quite interesting here. It's 40 to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit more, actually. We'll have a little more for questions and answers submitted by our audience here in the Creation Museum. Beforehand, we handed out these cards to everyone. I shuffled them here in the back, and in fact, I dropped a lot of them, and then I scooped them up again.
Great. Let's, come on.
Or if it's a question that I don't know how to read because it doesn't seem to make any sense, which sometimes happens just because of the way people write.
Really? They have 1 minute. Okay.
Be able to get to that at some point. Mr. Ham, you've been up first. You'll hop up first this time, and Mr. Nye, you can stand by for your responses. 2 minutes. How does creationism account for the celestial bodies, planets, stars, moons, moving further and further apart, and what function does that serve in the grand design?
Well, when it comes to looking at the universe, of course, we believe that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And I believe our creationist astronomers would say, yeah, you can observe the universe expanding. Why God is doing that? In fact, in the Bible, it even says he stretches out the heavens and seems to indicate that there is an expansion of the universe. And so we would say, yeah, that you can observe that. That fits with what we call observational science, exactly why God did it that way. I can't answer that question, of course, because, the Bible says that God made the heavens for his glory. And that's why he made.
Wait a minute. I thought you had all the answers. I thought one of the most common things for religious people to do is, well, how come you don't know this, that, and the other? How come you don't know how the universe was born? How come you don't know what consciousness is? You have the creator of the universe in your corner. How do you not understand that? What is he hiding from you? I thought that didn't happen.
The stars that we see out there, and it's to tell us how great he is and how big he is. And in fact, I think that.
How do you know that?
The thing about the universe. The universe is so large, so big out there. One of our planetarium programs looks at this.
Even how do you know that? How do you know that? Because of science.
So we go in and show you how large the universe is, and I think it shows us
scientifically
how great God is, how big.
Well, make that connection for me. Yeah, the universe is gigantically huge and continuing to expand. That is, in my opinion, miraculous. But when I say miraculous, I don't mean a miracle from God. I mean, it's something that is so amazing that it doesn't seem like it could be real, but it is.
He is, that he's an all-powerful God. He's an infinite God.
How do you know that?
God who created the universe to show us his power. I mean, can you imagine that? And the thing that's remarkable in the Bible, for instance, says on the fourth day of creation, and he made the stars also. It's almost like, oh, by the way, I made the stars. And just to show us, he's an all-powerful God. He's an infinite God. So I made the stars, and he made them to show us how great he is. And he is. He's an infinite creator God. And the more that you understand what that means, that God is all-powerful, infinite, you stand back in awe, you realize how small we are, you realize, wow, that God would consider this planet is so significant that he created human beings here, knowing they would sin, and yet stepped into history to die for us and be raised from the dead.
How do you know that?
Wow, what a God. And that's what I would say when I see the universe as it is.
Mr. Nye, 1 minute in your response.
There's a question that troubles us all from the time we are absolutely youngest and first able to think. And that is, where did we come from? Where did I come from? And this question is so compelling that we've invented the science of astronomy. We've invented life science. We've invented physics. We've discovered these natural laws so that we can learn more about our origin and where we came from. To you, when it says he invented the stars also, that's satisfying. You're done. Oh, good. Okay. To me, when I look at the night sky, I want to know what's out there. I'm driven. I want to know if what's out there is any part of me. And indeed, it is. The, oh, by the way, I find compelling, you are satisfied. And the big thing I want from you, Mr. Ham, is can you come up with something that you can predict? Do you have a creation model that predicts something that will happen in nature?
Boom. 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 Do you have anything in your creationist model that can predict something that will happen in nature? I'm gonna guess no, but who knows?
And that's time. Mr. Nye, the next question is for you. How did the atoms that created the Big Bang get there?
This is the great mystery. You've hit the nail on the head. No, this is so, what was before the Big Bang? This is what drives us. This is what we want to know. Let's keep.
So this is, whoever asked that question wanted to ask it as a gotcha. Like, oh, well, you don't know? So then must be God. But as we've talked about so many times before, that is simply a God of the gaps argument. Science and scientists have never claimed to understand everything about everything ever. That has never been a claim. That never will be a claim. But not understanding something is not grounds to attribute it to God. That's not how logic works. To be fair, if you ask Bill Nye the same question, he wouldn't come up with an answer about prediction. Well, yeah, when it comes to creationism, but if you ask him to come up with a prediction about natural law, again, he could take a pen and be like, I predict that I'm going to let it go and it's going to fall. Oh my God, I just predicted the future. Oh my God, am I Jesus? You don't think that he would be able to come up with anything like that? Because the laws of physics are they're not very simple, but they're pretty clear. So I would disagree with that. I think he could very easily come up with the same. I mean, I know he's not the top intellectual, but he's definitely smarter than me. And if I can come up with it, then I'm pretty sure he could too.
When I was young, it was presumed that the universe was slowing down. It's a big bang, except it's in outer space. There's no air, so it goes out like that. And so people presumed that it would.
That's funny if you're not dumb.
Slow down. That the universe, the gravity especially, would hold everything together, and maybe it's going to come back and explode again. And people went out, and the mathematical expression is the universe flat? This is a mathematical expression. Will the universe slow down asymptotically without ever stopping? Well, in 2004, Saul Perlmutter and his colleagues went looking for the rate at which the universe was slowing down. Let's go out and measure it. And we do it with this extraordinary system of telescopes around the world, looking at the night sky, looking for supernovae. These are standard brightness that you can infer distances with. And the universe isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. The universe is accelerating in its expansion. And do you know why? Nobody knows why. Nobody knows why. And
that must mean it's God, right? That must mean it's God.
You'll hear the expression nowadays, dark energy, dark matter, which are mathematical ideas that seem to reckon well with what seems to be the gravitational attraction of clusters of stars, galaxies, and their expansion. And then isn't it reasonable that whatever is out there causing the universe to expand is here also? And we just haven't figured out how to detect it. My friend, suppose a science student from the Commonwealth of Kentucky pursues a career in science and finds out the answer to that deep question. Where did we come from? What was before the Big Bang? To us, this is wonderful and charming and compelling. This is what makes us get up and go to work every day, is to try to solve the mysteries of the universe.
That's time. Mr. Ham, a response?
Bill, I just want
douche points incoming.
to let you know that there actually is a book out there that actually tells us where matter came from. And the very first sentence in that book says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And really, that's the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing that makes sense of why not just matter is here, where it came from, but why matter, when you look at it, we have information and language systems that build life, not just matter. And where did that come from? Because matter can never produce information. Matter can never produce a language system. Language is only...
How do you know that? How do you know that? Where is it that you've been in a place where you've seen testing of information matter producing a language system, and then the difference where it can't, like, that's just saying things. You don't know that. You just say that because it needs to be true in order for your narrative to be correct.
They come from intelligence. Information only comes from information. The Bible tells us that the things we see, like in the book of Hebrews, are made from things that are unseen.
Why should I care what the Bible
Infinite
says?
Creator God, who created universe, created matter, the energy, space, mass, time, universe, and created the information for life. It's the only thing that makes logical sense.
Is it though?
All right, Mr. Ham, a new question here. The overwhelming majority of people in the scientific community have presented valid physical evidence, such as carbon dating and fossils, to support evolutionary theory. What evidence besides the literal word of the Bible supports creationism?
Well, first of all, I often hear people talking about the majority. I would agree that the majority of scientists would believe in millions of years. The majority would believe in evolution, but there's a large group out there that certainly don't. But first thing I want to say is that it's not the majority that's a judge of truth. There have been many times in the past when the majority have got it wrong. The majority of doctors in England once thought after you cut up bodies, you could go and deliver babies, and wonder why the death rate was high in hospitals.
Right. And then how did they fix that? Through God? Or through science? Spoiler alert. It's science. What would make more sense? What would make more sense is that if doctors never did that and already understood germ theory and whatever, because God would have given that information. Why would God withhold that information from people and let society just crumble without an understanding of germ theory? That does not make sense. But again, starts and ends with science.
About diseases caused by bacteria and so on. The majority once thought the appendix was a leftover, organ from our evolutionary ancestry. So, when it's okay, rip it out. When it's disease, rip it out. Rip it out anyway. But these days we know that it's for
we know what, and how do we know it?
the immune system, and it's very, very important. So
how do we know that? Did God tell us that? Or did science tell us that?
First, it's important to understand that just because the majority believes something doesn't mean that it's true. And then, I'm sorry, I missed the last part of the question there.
What was the... Make sure I have the right question here.
About carbon dating.
So what evidence besides the literal word of the Bible supports creationism?
What's a heathern?
One of the things I was doing was I was making predictions. I made some predictions. There's a whole
Did you though?
list of predictions. And I was saying, if the Bible's right, and we're all descendants of Adam and Eve, there's one race. And I went through and talked about that.
That's not a prediction. Am I stupid? I made plenty of predictions. I said that if that happened, then it would be one thing. What was predicted there?
The Bible's right, and God made kinds. I went through and talked about that. And so,
but again, if is not that's not what a prediction means. I don't know if he understands what the word prediction means. It means you make a claim about the future and then it comes true.
It really, that question comes down to the fact that we're...
Oh, he's done. That was his list. Listen to this again. Specifically, he asked for the last part of the question. And then he was like, I made plenty of predictions. I said, if something is happening, then it means something. That's a prediction. Is it though? Come on.
I was doing was I was making predictions. I made some predictions. There's a whole list of...
Okay, a whole list.
And I was saying, if the Bible's right, and we're all descendants of Adam and Eve, there's one race. And I went through and talked...
Okay, so what's what is predicted? If there's Adam and Eve, there's one race. That's not a prediction.
About that. If the Bible's right and God made kinds, I went through and talked about that. And so,
If the Bible made kinds, then what? That is not a prediction. You're missing the prediction part. You're just saying things. Just saying things. God gave us science to figure out modern medicine because it would be cheating if he just gave us the knowledge. I mean, yeah. Like, why would he want to save innocent people? Like, we've got to earn that.
So, you know, really that question comes down to the fact that we're again dealing with the fact there's aspects about the past that you can't scientifically prove because you weren't there, but observational science in the present. Bill and I...
That was not the question. The question was about not the past, but the future.
All have the same observational science. We're here in the present. We can see radioactivity. But when it comes to then talking about the past, you're not going to be scientifically able to prove that. And that's what we need to admit. But we can be great scientists in the present, as the examples I gave you of Dr. Damadian or Dr. Stuart Burgess or Dr. Fabich, and we can be investigating the present. Understanding the past is a whole different matter.
Mr. Nye, 1 minute response.
Thank you, Mr. M.
I really hope he nails him down on that.
I have to disabuse you of a fundamental idea. If a scientist, if anybody, makes a discovery that changes the way people view natural law, scientists embrace him or her.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Louis Pasteur, you made reference to germs. No, if you find something that changes, that disagrees with the common thought, that's the greatest thing going in science. We look forward to that change. We challenge you. Tell us why the universe is accelerating. Tell us why these mothers were getting sick. And we found an explanation for it. And but just the idea that the majority has sway in science is true only up to a point. And then the other thing I just want to point out, what you may have missed in evolutionary explanations of life is it's the mechanism by which we add complexity. The Earth is getting energy from the sun all the time, and that energy is used to make life forms somewhat more complex.
And that's time. New question for you, Mr. Nye. How did consciousness come from matter?
We don't know. That is not a gotcha. There's plenty of things that we just don't fucking know yet. We may never know, but we don't know them yet. That is irrelevant to what we're talking about.
Don't know. This is a great mystery. A dear friend of mine is a neurologist. She studies the nature of consciousness.
Notice how it's always the people who have dogmatic thinking that believe they have all the answers. It's the scientific people, the actual scientific people, not the scientism people like Fauci. The actual scientists who treat science as it should be, as a method to the truth. It's those people who are always willing to say, I don't know. That's out of my area of expertise. Well, we know this, but we don't know that. Why is that? Mom and dad are conscious. Okay. God can't die, but if you believe that your God is dead, then your God is not all powerful. Keep going, Jimmy. You're getting them.
Now, I will say, I used to embrace a joke about dogs. I mean, who doesn't? And you can say, this guy remarked, I've never seen a dog paralyzed by self-doubt. Actually, I have. Furthermore, the thing that we celebrate, there are 3 sundials on the planet Mars that bear an inscription to the future. To those who visit here, we wish a safe journey and the joy of discovery. It's inherently optimistic about the future of humankind, that we will one day walk on Mars.
Continue.
But the joy of discovery, that's what drives us. The joy of finding out what's going on. So we don't know where consciousness comes from, but we want to find out. Furthermore, I'll tell you, it's deep within us. I claim that I have spent time with dogs that have had the joy of discovery. It's way inside us. We have one ancestor, as near as we can figure. And by the way, if you can find what we in science call a second Genesis, this is to say, did life start another way on the Earth? There are researchers at Astrobiology Institute, researchers supported by NASA, your tax dollars, that are looking for answer to that very question. Is it possible that life could start another way? Is there some sort of life form akin to science?
Wait a minute. He doesn't get, Ham doesn't get any points for being like, well, Bill, I don't know if you know this, but there's a book that has all the answers, and it's called the Bible. No, fuck that. You're being biased. Ham needs points for that. How many? You decide. But that was douchey.
Fiction that's crystal instead of membranous. This would be a fantastic discovery that would change the world. The nature of consciousness is a mystery. I challenge the young people here to investigate that very question. And I remind you, taxpayers and voters that might be watching, if we do not embrace the process of science, mainstream, we will fall behind economically. This is a point I can't say enough.
Mr. Ham, a 1-minute response.
Bill, I do want to say that there is a book out there that does document where consciousness came from. And in that book, the one who created us said that he made man in his image, and he breathed into man, and he became a living being. And so the Bible does document that. That's where consciousness came from, that God gave it to us. And, the other thing I want to say is I'm sort of a little, I have a mystery. And that is, you talk about the joy of discovery, but you also say that when you die, it's over, and that's the end of you. And if when you die, it's over, and you don't even remember you were here, what's the point of the joy of discovery anyway? I mean, in an ultimate sense.
That is sad. That is sad. To think that without somebody telling you, hey, this is who you are, this is your purpose, I decide, and you must follow my rules. That the pure joy of discovering something you didn't know before is meaningless. Is it though? It breaks my heart that people think that having all of the answers already is a better way than having an endless. What? Oh, maybe on are we still good in here? Somebody hit something in the comments. So Positas said the stream just got cut. Maybe just from Twitch. Yeah, I don't know. Well, he's still here. I don't remember what I was saying, but yeah, that's sad. That's sad to me. So let's back that up.
You talk about the joy of discovery, but you also say that when you die, it's over, and that's the end of you. And if when you die, it's over, and you don't even remember you were here, what's the point of the joy of discovery anyway?
That's so sad.
I mean, in an ultimate sense. I mean, you won't ever know you were ever here, and no one who knew you will know they were ever here ultimately. So what's the point anyway? I love the joy of discovery because this is God's creation, and I'm finding more out about that to take dominion for.
How much did we miss? I looked on the other thing and it said your stream is no longer being blocked due to copyright issues. What did I fuck everything. Whatever.
For man's good and for God's glory.
Mr. Ham, a new question. This is a simple question, I suppose, but one that actually is fairly profound for all of us in our lives.
He didn't really say
what, if anything, would ever change your mind?
This is going to be very interesting. What, if anything, would change your mind? Yeah, let's see where that goes.
Well, the answer to that question is, I'm a Christian. And as a Christian, I can't prove it to you, but God has definitely shown me very clearly through his word and shown himself in the person of Jesus Christ. The Bible is the word of God. I admit that that's where I start from. I can challenge people that you can go and test that. You can make predictions based on that. You can check the prophecies in the Bible. You can check the statements in Genesis. You can check that. And I did a little bit of that tonight. And I can't ultimately prove that to you. All I can do is to say to someone, look, if the Bible really is what it claims to be, if it really is the word of God and that's what it claims, then check it out. And the Bible says if you come to God believing that he is, he'll reveal himself to you and you will know. As Christians, we can say we know. And so,
see, we know, we got it. We have the answers. What discovery? Discovery? Discovering new things? That's silly. We already have the answers, bro. Understanding new aspects of your own life, the universe, whatever, is some of the most valuable experiences that I don't know about you guys, but that I'm talking. How the fuck is... All right. All right, I'm just going to keep talking and see if maybe we can... I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. This has never happened to me before. Can anybody see me? No. All right. Can I fucking do something about that? Like, what it... Are we back? Are we here? Yes? Anybody out there? Anybody out there? Hello? Anybody out there? Let me know if anybody can hear me. Can anybody hear me? Where the fuck y'all at? Anybody out there? Is there anybody out there? Hey, all right, and we're back, Let me just make sure. If this happens again, I'm just gonna dip out. We'll go right to. Thank you guys. If that happens again, just hop right into Discord. I'm not gonna deal with that bullshit because I don't know. Like literally while I am talking, they give me some bullshit. But whatever. Yeah. Point is, that's sad. I think it's a discovery of the universe and things like that. That is one of the best experiences that we can have. So let's back this up a little bit.
And that's what it claims. Then check it out. The Bible says if you come to God believing that
maybe if I do that,
himself to you, and you will know. As
Christians,
you will know. Say we know.
As Christians.
And so, as far as the Word of God is concerned,
interesting.
No one's ever going to convince me that that the Word of God is true.
So nobody is going to convince him that the Word of God is not true. So we don't have an open-minded person here. Okay.
But I do want to make a distinction here, and for Bill's sake, we build models based upon the Bible, and those models are always subject to change. The fact of Noah's flood is not subject to change. The model of how the flood occurred is subject to change because we observe in the current world, and we're able to come up with maybe different ways this could have happened or that could have happened, and that's part of that scientific discovery. That's part of what it's all about. So the bottom line is that as a Christian, I have a foundation, but as a Christian, I would ask Bill the question: what would change your mind? I mean, you said even if you came to faith, you'd never give up believing in billions of years. I think I quoted you correctly. You said something like that.
Many people, I think all of you, have except for Division Plus in any film. I think all of you have a level of faith, and none of you believe in a young Earth. Right? Am I wrong about that?
Recently, so that'd be also my question to Bill.
Time, Mr. Nye.
We would just need one piece of evidence. We would need the fossil that swam from one layer to another.
So what's the difference? One is saying, I will never change. I know what I know, and I know it for sure. And the other person is saying, one piece of evidence. I don't know if we're at the final count, but so far, douche level, Ham is at 11, closing the gap to Nye's 21. Let's see if he can close it up a little bit more.
We need evidence that the universe is not expanding. We would need evidence that the stars appear to be far away, but they're not.
God damn it.